could be watching there or on YouTube or across social media. You can download the podcast. Pretty much everything we do is podcast, video and audio. So join us. Let us know what you think. We always appreciate a thumbs up or a subscribe, and it would be good to hear from you. info@mira.fm is the email address to get in touch with us here, but also you can WhatsApp, and very simply whatsapp.mira.fm should bring up the dialogue box. Now, next on the morning drive, we're going to head back into a topic that's shaping the future of, I think it's fair to say, every industry: artificial intelligence, and obviously the accompanying data. Now, from game-changing announcements in 2025 to what businesses might expect next year in 2026, we're unpacking the trends that are set to redefine growth, customer engagement and innovation. And joining us to break it all down is AI and data expert Vasudha Khandapakar, who has been at the forefront of building data teams and scaling AI capabilities across industries worldwide. Vasudha, it's good to be talking to you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
You're very welcome. It's good to have you with us. I thought we could start, if you don't mind, by kind of reflecting back on this year, key kind of AI and data milestones. Really difficult question to start, I'm afraid, but I guess we got to start somewhere. So what were the most, do you think, transformative AI announcements this year, and why do those announcements matter so much for business?
I think if I reflect back on the year, there would be I think the announcements, I can distill them down into a few of them that really sort of made a huge impact for me, particularly given the industry sectors that I look at, as well as, looking into the future. And I think one of them is definitely I think everybody is aware of, the hype around NVIDIA, what's going on with GPUs, what's going on with chips. So I think what's been really, really interesting to note and to see, not just in the UAE, but across the GCC as a whole, is that ability to get a hold of GPUs, get a hold of that compute power, if you call it that, where we're not just set for now, but we also can scale very easily as a region. I think that for me is paramount. I think number two, from a financial services perspective, was definitely the announcement of the digital dirham, where the impact, I think, can be felt very quickly and very far and wide across the UAE, because it's now we've got rails which allow us to, pay people, salary transfers, interactions with money become so much smoother, so much quicker. And I think that's very, very important. And I think as a parent, for me, bringing up kids here in the UAE, the third announcement has to be the inculcation of AI curriculum into schools, because we're not just building an infrastructure that is working for businesses, but if you think about it, we're also building a workforce that is ready to leverage these technologies, that is ready to use all of these to build the country in a much faster and a much better fashion in the future.
Which industries do you think, and I guess I'm talking about this year once again, but I guess this is also a slightly broader question as well. Which industries have seen the fastest adoption of AI, do you think, Vasudha? And what lessons can, other industries learn from that?
I think the two industries that kind of stand out are undoubtedly, sort of the regulated ones, so financial services and healthcare. And I think they have grown leaps and bounds. And I think the one thing that other industries can also pick up is, if you look at a regulated industry, the impact of getting it wrong is enormous, because one mistake can impact lives in ways that you haven't thought about yet. And that's the reason why the regulated healthcare is regulated, financial services is regulated. But the advantage that these industries have is that they've got data and they're using what they already have. They're using the knowledge that they already have and they're building on that. And they're making not sort of step change improvements, but they're making small improvements and they're building them up to show the scale of the impact. And I think that is important. You don't need to do a big bang with AI anymore. Pick one thing, and do it well, fix one problem, and the impact that it has is huge. And I think that is something that a lot of businesses can take with them, is you don't need to fix your entire customer journey in one go. You don't need to fix, say, fraud pipelines in one go. You can pick out one aspect of that pipeline, fix it, use AI to make it faster, make it smoother, and the impact is felt all through the chain. And I think that's what banking or financial services as a whole, and even healthcare as a whole, have done. They've not gone and said, hey, we're going to fix everything to do with this particular care pathway. We're going to say, look at radiology scans, and we're going to try and say predict how we can find uh, breast cancer markers sooner. And that's great, because it's picked one very specific problem and solved for one very specific question. And that's had a huge impact. And that's the same thing that you can see in financial services, where if you look at fraud, they are picking up small transactions, they're picking up different transactional patterns, and they're just looking at the ways in which customers interact with money, and they're using that to make a decision in terms of whether that could be fraudulent or not. And that then has an impact across the pipeline, because while you can think about AI as having an impact in a game changing way, which is what people understand today because of the LLMs that they interact with, like ChatGPT, Gemini, etc. The one thing that tends to get forgotten is, how is it getting used? It's not getting used in a big bang way. It's getting used to make these small changes, which ultimately have a huge impact, whether it's on productivity, whether it's on efficiency, or whether it's on cost reduction. And ultimately, I think what's going to be important in the future is, once you've realized all those efficiencies, how do you start generating more revenue for the business in itself?
I think that's a really salient point you make there, because it's as though the last couple of years have been all about AI capabilities, and it's AI this and it's AI that, and I've felt a little bit a point where if I never hear that phrase AI capability once again, it will be too soon, kind of thing. And I think it's almost as though we're past that. AI is embedded now. It would be odd if organizations, businesses, us as people weren't embedding AI or using AI to our advantage. Let's look at implications for growth in business terms. How are organizations using and leveraging data so that they can really enhance customer experience and, following that, really drive business growth?
I think where businesses are using, it's not just the data that they have. I think what's important to understand is also the knowledge that the business has about its customers. And that's where you actually see the magic happen when it comes to AI. Because you not just have what someone's doing, but you also know why they've done it. And you can then turn around and go, hey, actually, I don't need to give this product or service to this customer. What they actually need is a slight variation of this. And then for me as a business, I can make a decision on whether the economics of offering that product makes sense. So say in banking terms, if you're offering remittances to customers, you can offer different remittance rates, you can offer different currency exchange rates. But ultimately, if you know that a customer is always only going to do it once a month, and there is a specific reason as to why they're doing it in terms of, say, paying bills in their home country, you can almost tell them that, as you've got a payment infrastructure here for your bills, I can offer that to you. It's understanding the customer, understanding their intent, which has become so much easier. And actually, that intent is not as easily visible in the data, but it is visible in the individuals who've been interacting with that data. So I think what's really, really important for the future is, while you've got that data, and you will always struggle with legacy systems, don't forget that you've also built up a data team or a set of individuals who know that data inside out. And I think in the quest for leveraging AI and making sure that AI brings efficiencies to data teams in particular, we often forget that there is so much knowledge residing in data teams that we sort of ignore them at scale sometimes.
Let's have a look ahead at 2026. So here comes the future question. Be ready. What trends in data and what trends in AI should businesses be preparing for over the next 12 months, or looking towards the next 12 months?
I think there'll definitely be, as I said, those micro elements. So where we are, and let's take LLMs to start with.
Mm.
Instead of building these large scale programs which look at data overall across the globe in some instances, as say a ChatGPT would do, I think what businesses are going to do is they're going to build something that's a lot more private and a lot more tuned towards their own data and their own infrastructure. And that can be a lot more powerful because then you don't get aspects like hallucinations coming in, and you don't get your outputs being muddied by inputs from other sources which may not be as relevant to you. Then I think there is a lot of influx of things like AI co-pilots, which will come into the equation across sectors, across industries, and irrespective of which side of the fence you're on, whether you're the business or whether you're the customer interacting with that business. I think it will be hugely important to understand that it may not always be a human that you're interacting with at the other side of the fence, whether it is the recommendation of the product that's coming to you, or whether it's the agent who's speaking to you on chat when you're speaking to, say, your bank or another organization. What I think will also start impacting a lot of students, schools, universities and it's happening already, is where say students are using a lot of AI to respond to a lot of their assignments. I think what we'll start finding is AI is becoming more central to some of the education that's being provided today, and teachers encouraging the incorporation of these tools into how students respond, how students learn the data, because it allows them to learn at their own pace and also understand in a way that traditional education might not be able to explain it to them in. And I think these are a few things to sort of keep in mind. And I think it's important because as you have new workforce coming in, a workforce that's hugely used to using tools like say a GPT or a Copilot to do their work, these are the individuals who are coming into the workforce. So how do you leverage their knowledge of the front end AI systems to improve workflows within your organization? And as a consumer, how do you then know how best to extract the value that you need from the business or the product that you're buying into?
How do you, I mean, this is kind of a side question really, but how do you moderate the use of AI when it comes to education? Because there are obviously the dangers there of AI doing a little bit more than, just becoming a little bit more than just being a tool that we harness, in that, AI could effectively, in some cases, write that essay for you, solve that issue, that problem for you at school. How do you balance that equation?
I read something. I read an example of what a teacher back in a school in the US, and that's actually something that I use with my kids. It resonated with me quite a lot. Obviously, I can write your essays for you. Obviously, it can give you solutions to the problems.
Mm.
But as somebody who consumes AI on a regular basis, and I'm sure this is true of everybody who's listening right now, you've noticed when it makes a mistake. You know when it's not quite right.
Mm.
So what I do with my kids is I say, it's fine. It's a free for all. You can use whatever you want to use. You can do whatever you want to do. You can solve the problem, however, but I want you to find one mistake. And I want you to go and prove to me why it's a mistake. And it could be something as simple as, ChatGPT telling them 1 + 1 is 5, or it could be, an error that it's made in a historic fact, which has been debunked, but that source was, say, not available to the algorithm when it was being tuned. And what they've then sort of learned to realize is as the outputs are coming out, don't trust it 100%. Apply your own thinking. Why is something correct? Why is it saying this? And query it. Go dig, go find your own facts, go search and understand why it's saying something in the way that it's responding to you. And whether you're using it to, say, find code, or whether you're using it to find the answer to a complicated maths problem, or even write an essay for you, the answer is going to be a guide. you are still the one who's going to have to go and fact check it. You're still going to have to go and find out whether or not there is an error in what it's given you. And you have to do that for yourself. You have to ask those questions. You have to build that critical thinking ability. It's not going to be given to you. You have to know that there are errors, and those errors will be, can be found. And I show them these things where, I've done some research using an LLM, and I've said, okay, please give me the links to each of those sources. And more often than not, those links don't even exist. They're phantom links. The LLM is hallucinated. And I show them these things. I said, look, I know that these are typically where hallucinations happen, and this is how I tend to problem solve for them. And they then start using that and go, okay, fine, show me where this fact has been proven. And, if they can't find the link, then they know that it's an error, and then they go and find the answers themselves. And I think it's important to build that in as well, because let's all be honest, irrespective of whether you're a college student or somebody trying to draft a complicated email at work, you're definitely trying to go and use sort of Copilot or GPT or Gemini to do some of the heavy lifting for you. What's important is we don't lose our ability to think in the bargain.
This is the thing, isn't it? I guess if you use AI sensibly, you should be able to create whatever you're creating without AI. So it's finding that balance somewhere. At some point, I guess we're going to have the perfect formula for that. Fingers crossed, I hope, at least. Let me just ask you about any emerging technologies. Technology moves so fast, I can't keep up. I don't think many people can keep up. But any emerging technologies and tools that are set to perhaps redefine or refine even data-driven decision making? Anything coming?
There's there's a lot that's happening in terms of tools, technologies that will come in. I think, like I mentioned earlier, the private sort of LLMs, AI tools that businesses are building in-house will be very important. And the reason it's important is because a lot of these algorithms rely on recall. And now, instead of recalling from global information, they're recalling from local information, which then becomes very important. And actually, you see iterations of these in the government bodies here in the UAE. So DLD, for example, has their own chatbots and their own knowledge management systems that sit on top of their policies. And where, if you ask their chatbot internally within the website, it actually pulls out that relevant policy and translates it for you in a manner where it is only relying on the policies within land departments. So I think these kinds of iterations, these micro implementations of AI will start becoming very important. And I think from a broader perspective, which impacts businesses irrespective of scale, will start becoming things like, autonomous analysis. And I think we're seeing small iterations of those already coming out, where businesses are not really building and scaling, say, AI teams or data teams. They're building blocks. It's almost like, think about it like a construction site. You don't sort of construct, 100-story building up front. They've got the foundations, they've got the data rails, and instead of, sort of building an entire data team or AI team, they're building small foundational elements. They're using tools to give them the analysis of their customers, analysis of, operational behavior through the tools, rather than doing it through a data team. And I think that's very important, because you can analyze data immediately. It becomes a lot more important. You can start triggering actions a lot quicker than a human can intervene as well. But what then becomes very important is that understanding of the data. And I think related to that is where you've got that agent human interaction, which will start becoming more important in 26 as we sort of go into it, cleaning the data, running some of the analysis, triggering any alerts. And I think that will also come to the forefront. And I think finally, in terms of banking, fintech, that still hasn't quite touched the scale that it can achieve, but we're moving at a very, very fast pace. So you've got a lot of sort of instantaneous settlements. You'll have programmable rails that will come up and become available for institutions here. And I think it'll almost set the benchmark for sort of global payments and the way the payments ecosystem will need to work based on what's happening here in the UAE. And things like compliance checks, fraud checks, transparency, all starts becoming very, very quick and very, very easy. And I think for me, these would be sort of the 4 or 5 things that are all sort of intertwined, but really are exciting elements to look forward to next year.
Can we look very quickly at just specifically, leadership in business, and then some practical advice for businesses as well? How should business leaders structure their teams so that they can get, the maximum possible value from AI and data initiatives? And also, if I can kind of tack on to that, what skills are going to be most in demand next year for professionals in data and in AI?
I think the three sort of most common problems that you would see across any organization here in the region, particularly, is that you've got a legacy infrastructure. So you've got you've got your data sat in systems which don't quite interact with the modern sort of AI driven technology that is available and businesses and leaders often want to use. So I think the key is understanding that infrastructure is going to be key, and the modernization of infrastructure is absolutely key in sort of building and deploying AI. There's no point in having a full-fledged AI team when they can't leverage or build any of those tools given the infrastructure that they have, which is then why data engineering and engineering teams become very, very important. And that's almost the foundational element that businesses leaders need to have to make sure that the infrastructure is usable. And it needs to be usable today because, as you pointed out earlier, it's changing so quickly that there's no point in building something that's perfect for the AI implementations that you need today. You need to think about how you would be using them, say, in 3 5 years. Somebody who can build you the scaffolding very, very quickly, that allows you to build the AI systems and then move on. That's the kind of data and engineering team that you need. Then you kind of move on to the teams that are actually building you those AI products, almost, if you will. So do you need analysts? Do you need data scientists? Do you need AI engineers? And that then sort of starts becoming the next layer that you build on. So how are you actually driving value from data? The value from data doesn't only come from your AI teams, it comes across multiple teams. And again, that's where the test and learn mindset also comes in. Can your analysts who are using machine learning algorithms, or people who are doing sort of simple, this is the state of affairs with your customers today, what is the value that they're generating for you, and what is the value that the AI teams can bring into the equation? And I think underpinning all of this, Tim, I think, as you've also said, is this huge element of change. Everything is changing at such a fast pace. I go to sleep and then I wake up in the morning and there's something new that's been launched. Now, for me, I can kind of draw the parallels, but then as a business leader, what's important to understand is that same pace of change that's hitting you is also hitting your teams and your customers. How do you speak to them? And how do you scale in a way that takes your customers and your teams on that journey with you? I'm not saying that your entire team or all your customers will join you on that journey, but that change management and the change enablement is something that is key and often forgotten in a lot of organizations. So, how do I empower my teams to leverage AI? How do I empower my teams to build some of these, really game changing tools? At the same time, how do I also give them the space to sort of learn and be okay with the fact that things are changing and they're changing at this pace? I think those for me would be the three key things in terms of structuring teams as well as building strategy that work for the organization, leverage data, and sort of take customers on that journey with you. And I think what's key to understand is if you fall on any one of these aspects, the foundation, the product teams, or this change management, what lands up happening is you get stuck in this constant loop of pilots. I've built this really great product, but I'm not able to scale it. And if you really want to realize value from AI, you need to make sure that all of these three elements work well, and work well together.
Getting the basics right. What about in terms of the skills, Vasudha, that you think are going to be most in demand for in 2026? I probably tacked two questions together there that didn't need to be tacked, but what do you think about skills?
I think from a skills perspective, it's individuals who can almost be those AI product owners. So people who can build you that entire product from pilot all the way to scale. So someone who can manage it. Think about it, if you're launching, say, a new perfume, you would have somebody who's managing the entire pipeline from choosing what it smells like to the packaging to the bottling to making sure it's manufactured. So you need that person who can look at it end to end and understand and make sure that they sort of problem solve as it goes, as you're scaling your AI programs. You then, like I mentioned earlier as well, you need those foundational data engineering teams who can make sure that the infrastructure that you have and the data that is available within that infrastructure is consumable. So those are definitely two skills that become very, very important. I know that prompt engineering has been around for a long time, and people want individuals who can write good prompts. And that I think will continue as we build different AI iterations. You will need different types of prompt engineering, and that will continue. What I also think is you will require a lot of sector expertise, whether it's financial services, whether it's healthcare, whether it's public services. You will need individuals who understand the industry, understand the complications in the industry that often get missed out in data. And I always say, I always give the example of, say you're trying to buy something, or you're booking a holiday. Your child comes in at 11 p.m. because they've got a temperature. The first thing you do is not continue with your purchase. You put everything on the side, make sure that your child is okay, put them back to bed, sort them out, and you've probably sometimes even forgotten about what you were doing. And then you come back day later. You've got a discount code probably to complete that purchase, and that's what triggers you to make that purchase and complete it. Your child coming into the room and interrupting you is never going to get caught in the data pipeline. So it's people who understand the nuances. Why is it that people turn left instead of going straight at the lights? If you're looking at roads and transport, why is it that people still prefer to drive versus taking the metro? What is it that's not covered in the metro infrastructure? Why is it that people still prefer to send their remittances through one provider versus another provider? What is it that they're not getting in the services that you are providing? That sector expertise and the depth of understanding will start becoming very, very important. And all of these elements almost wrap up into just one key aspect: who can deliver the outcomes for you. It's no longer about pilots, because pilots exist across every organization and those have worked. It's now who can put a nice wrapper around these pilots, drive them, and achieve sort of key outcomes and value that organizations are really looking for from AI. Investments have been made. Now let's make sure that we get the value realization from it.
Couple of questions. Maybe actually just one more question for you. And this is, I'm just wondering if you can ruminate a little on this. But for what about those of us at work who are still wary of AI, the implications of AI, just the thought of this looming intelligence there? How can companies best encourage their employees to embrace artificial intelligence? Because I think there's still trepidation. You can feel it with people.
So for me, I think when a team member, say for example, comes with this, why the first question I ask them is, what is it that you're scared about?
Mm.
What is it that worries you about adopting this? And if I kind of think to the responses I get, there's obviously the job side of things. I mean, we work in data teams, we see how AI sort of changes the very nature of the work that you do. And I think it's important to understand why there is that trepidation. Is it going to become all consuming? Is it going to, sort of lead you into the sci-fi movie territory? Is it the job, or is it something else? And it can range from, I'm worried for my job. But if it is a tool, if it is a technology, if you're building a skill set that's going to be relevant for the future, or you're even a sector expert, you're there is a place for you in this ecosystem, and there is a value that you bring to the table. And if it is, the whole sci-fi element, the human intervention in AI is still so important, because like I said, data is always only going to paint 80% of the picture, but that last mile 20% still requires human intervention, and that will always be important. The AI system only becomes better when it interacts with the human. So the more you embrace it, the more you interact with it, the more it becomes suitable for the purposes that you are building and you are developing. And I think that's important to understand. Why are you worried? What is it that's stopping you? And I've also had people who say, we come from a mindset where we've learned, and we need to be comfortable in terms of the technology that we're using, in terms of what we're bringing to, say, the workplace. We put ourselves out there as the experts, and if we are then relying on a technology, as we do with the college kids who use ChatGPT to write an essay, we often think of it as cheating. But that's not it. It's, I would say, think about it the other way. You've now got access to the best libraries in the world, giving you the best, the worst, the answers to experiments that have worked well, the answers to experiments that have failed. And you can use all of this knowledge to improve what you're doing. This is knowledge that you would never have at your fingertips before. So for me, it's always why. The first question is always why. Why are you worried about this? What is it that is stopping you from adopting this? And then speaking to that worry and understanding, how you sort of bring that to the table. And it's a good worry, because if you then say implement a chatbot for your customers, the chances are that customer also has the same worry. How can AI understand me better than a human can? Why should I rely on this AI implementation? So I think it's very important to acknowledge the fact that there is that trepidation, as you say, and bring it to the conversation as well. It is a very important part of the conversation, and we should definitely talk about it a lot more than probably we are talking about today, because that's some of the missing element in terms of why a lot of these AI programs are just not working.
It's been fascinating talking to you. It really has. AI and data in 2025, and what 2026 might hold in terms of AI and data. Vasudha Khandapaka is an AI and data expert, over 15 years of international experience in various industries and functions. And I really appreciate you joining us this morning, Vasudha, on Mirror Business FM.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Good to have you with us. This is
Mira Business FM, Dubai's home of business radio.
This is Mirror Business FM with me, Tim Elliott. It's the morning drive. Good morning to you. Katherine Reed is with us now. She is the founder of Short Stay Circle. Now, I'll introduce Katherine in just a moment. She's doing limbering up as we speak, doing a few exercises and all that kind of stuff. But as we head into the busiest travel period of the year, from Christmas getaways to New Year's staycations, the UAE short-term rental market is under more pressure than ever to deliver those five-star, those seamless experiences. So demand is surging. Operators are juggling the usual things, really: pricing, guest expectations, staffing, tech, compliance. So the question is, what does it take to win during peak season, and why are trust and collaboration becoming the most valuable currencies in the short stay economy? Katherine's here. She runs Short Stay Circle, and it's kind of it's like a UAE-based community. It's short-term rental operators, it's hospitality founders, it's service providers. It's where you all go to get along, Katherine, isn't it, really? Yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of the way it works. Nice to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. So let's start. Before we jump into everything, I just want to start with you because you've got a couple of things kind of that you do. Short Stay Circle is one, but you're actually a teacher by trade.
I am.
Yeah.
I was, for many years.
Hence, why career change is my first question.
It's an interesting one, Tim, because I'd been in the education sector for many, many years. So for about 20 years, I'd worked in education. I worked in London for about 12 years before moving out here as an assistant head teacher. And the scope and the way that the curriculum and education system was run has changed quite significantly since I first graduated.
Yeah.
And for me as well, there were so many amazing things about teaching, but it's all I'd ever known.
Do you know what? And that, to me, that is, I don't mean to butt in, but to me, that's as good a reason, because there's no reason why anymore, I think, you have to be a career, anything, whether it's teaching or, whatever career you choose. There's no reason why you can't change path, is there?
Oh, well, exactly that. And I think, you grow up thinking, well, you used to grow up thinking that was the case, right?
You did. Yeah, you did.
And that was your only option. And I don't think I'm alone in saying that teachers feel like once a teacher, always a teacher. There's no necessarily other option for you. But the reality is there are. And the soft skills and the wide range of skills that you learn, not just as a teacher, but then if you step into leadership, like I did for many, many years, are transferable. And they can transfer in many different ways and into many different industries. So,
well, as soon as you said that, I was thinking that, because I can see lots of the correlation, particularly in terms of those real soft skills, how they would transfer to what you're doing now. So it doesn't seem like an astonishing leap, but it is interesting what you do. I want to talk a little bit about Short Stay Circle in a bit, but just first of all, you've had a pretty busy year. There's pilot events. You're launching your official membership program, your digital hub, just in time for the holiday rush. So the timing is, congratulations on that. I see the smile. Christmas and New Year are kind of make or break periods for short stay operators, I suppose. This is real busy season. Let me ask you this before we do this kind of move forward. From what you're seeing on the ground, how is the holiday season changing the way operators approach their business? Can we start there?
yeah, I think, we're very seasonal here, particularly in the UAE. So in terms of short-term rentals, even from Dubai to Abu Dhabi and the different Emirates as well, you do see a difference. So what a lot of short-term rental operators now are gearing up or are in the middle of what you've quite rightly said, the busy season. And then when summer hits, it is a slightly quieter season. So what we're seeing within this industry is how operators then prepare for what is about to happen or is currently happening, and then also how they adjust for the slightly quieter season and what that looks like for them and what they can do and what alterations they can make within their business model during that time.
No, that makes sense. I mean, I like how you describe the. I guess you're referring to summer, but the slightly quieter season. Because I think, and this is kind of anecdotally what we see and what we feel, that it used to be mass exodus in the summer. It's too hot, everybody goes. It's really not the case anymore.
No, it's not. And we're seeing more and more people, particularly from the UK, for example, who are visiting Dubai during the summer holidays, for example. So this is like peak summertime for us. So July, August.
Slightly cheaper deal, maybe.
Exactly
Mad
that.
Dogs and Englishmen and all that.
Exactly that, but they can spend the same amount of money and go to Europe, where they've been going for the last 10 years. And, you know, I like to call them Dubai curious. There are a lot of people who are Dubai curious because, let's be honest, Dubai is everywhere at the moment.
Love it. Well, that's true.
Yeah,
that is true. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Short Stay Circle, just the basis of it. But also, a business like this, I guess, is all about trust. It's all about connections. You need to vet the connections as well. Why is it that trust is even more critical during peak travel periods like this time now, Christmas, New Year, festive period?
You know what? The short-term rental space is so complex. There's so many layers that sit behind what on the surface seems just a holiday home, right? There's so many different aspects and so many different layers that make that work.
Yeah.
And trust comes down. Trust is the pinnacle, really, of a business that's going to function at the best because of when things go wrong. For example, you are going to have maintenance that's going to need to be done. So if the AC stops working, you need a reliable company that you trust and know that you can get hold of at 2 o'clock in the morning because you've got a guest who's messaging you or your team at 2 o'clock in the morning to then get somebody there ASAP because the AC stopped working or there's a leak. You've got cleaning companies. So I don't know if you know, there's a window that every single short-term rental business across Dubai has between check-out and check-in to get the cleaning done. It's a 4-hour window between 11 and 3. Right. So every single short-term rental business between 11 and 3 is going to be cleaning the units. Now, some short-term rental businesses and units will offer late checkout. That narrows that window even more. So trust is so important with this because that's what again, like you've got the traffic at the moment in Dubai, which can cause delays and so forth. So that can't be helped. But you need to have these trusted service providers that are going to help the short-term rental businesses because at the end of the day, everybody wants the same thing. Everybody wants those 5-star reviews. Everybody wants that feedback because everybody wants return business. Everybody wants referrals and everybody wants, the best feedback that they can get.
Since you launched in June, the community's engaged, am I right in saying over 200 industry professionals?
Yeah.
Something like over 20 brand collaborations and reported returns are over 400% for participating businesses. So that's a pretty decent result, I would think. You must be you're not frowning, you're smiling, which is good. But it does beg the question, I was thinking about this last night, why hasn't somebody done this before?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting one. And when I first started this, the majority of people asked me exactly the same question. Like, I had a few people that sit within the short-term rental space, one of whom I now work with quite closely as well for Short Stay Circle. She messaged me and she said, finally, this space exists. And I think, do you know what it is? I think there's a lot of fear about competition.
Okay.
So there seems to be this idea or this preconception that people don't necessarily want to work together within this specific industry and potentially other industries as well. It's particularly here in the UAE, we're all of a very similar mindset. A lot of us are extremely ambitious and driven and so forth. But the reality is that people do need this space and people do want this space because of what we've seen over the last 6 months. And even people who were a little bit, I think, on the fence to begin with have actually come to a couple of our events and are now signed up for membership. So, as you said, it's been a very short period of time, but we've gained quite a lot of momentum and a lot of traction within within that short space of time.
I mean, you have to gain trust of people as well when you start a community like this. I guess it's it's just simple, plain hard work, isn't it? But you're within an industry. The real estate, that great big umbrella real estate industry here, where it is so competitive. There is so much going on. We're talking real estate after you've been in here this morning, and one of my mantras is always to the people that come in that really know what they're talking about. I can't keep up with the launches. I have no idea really where anything is anymore because it's grown so much. And I guess people are very protective of their territory because it's kind of a territory thing as well. You can understand why people are a bit like, this is my place and I don't want anybody else. No, don't take my AC guy or anything else. I can understand why people think that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
It makes sense. In terms of your membership program and the launch of the digital hub this month, strategically, why is this the right moment? Because I can't help but think it probably would have been easier when it's not quite so busy, or would it?
Well, this is it. I mean, look, we've been trialing it for the last 6 months, okay? And we're about to head into a new year. So people are thinking about the year ahead. They're thinking about procurement. They're thinking about...
But did you not think, why don't I make my life even harder than it already is?
Well, look, it's a soft launch, okay? So it's a soft launch this month. It is a busy season, right?
Yeah.
But what it does is it sets the people that have signed up, for me at the moment, it's about quality over quantity. Right. So I'm not about to say we've got hundreds and hundreds of trusted partners and so forth that we're about to enrol, because we go through a vetting process and it's got to be right and for them as it is for us. Yeah. And I'm very aware of that. So it is going to take some time to launch, and this is only phase 1, but we're doing our soft launch now. Because again, it's a community, right? So it's not just a case of us launching something and being like, right, off you go, bye, I'm off. I want feedback. Like, we want to know what is working, what isn't working, how we can make this better. And we're going to be working with the individual members and the trusted partners as well, because we want to make sure that they're getting the best out of this. So yes, it's a busy season, and yes, there's a lot going on, but if anything, it puts them in good stead for January onwards. And as I said, it's a soft launch in December.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, you're going to get feedback for this time of year, that's for sure.
Yeah.
For an Airbnb host, a short-term rental host or a property manager, when they're preparing for holiday bookings, what value does an individual member get? And especially as well, the backdrop is kind of, they're kind of already overwhelmed with the season, I suppose.
Yeah. They get it's connection, for one. Right. So there's lots. They get education, connection, and direct access to suppliers, operators, and so forth. So for me, what I've found, particularly people who are new to this industry and potentially even new to the country, is that, and I don't think this rests purely just within this industry either, is it's lonely. So, you might not have friends, or you might not know anybody that's in the same kind of industry that can understand sort of like what you need to do and how you need to get there and who you need to speak to and so forth, and can give you advice because they've gone through it themselves. So what this community does, so for example, the coffee morning that we had a couple of weeks ago at the beginning of December, we had some very experienced individuals who were there within the short-term rental space, and some people who were quite new, and if not one person there was brand new to the short-term rental space. Okay. And the questions that he was asking, there were other members that were able to answer that. And at one point, one of the ladies that was sat around the table said, I really wish that someone was there to answer these questions for me when I first established it. So I think, yes, it's a busy season, but I think even more so because there's so much especially if you're new, there's so much that's coming at you right now that if you've got someone to come and ask a question that nobody else is going to be able to answer, it's a trusted space for that to happen.
I guess I know it's a heavily regulated area. There's an enormous amount more work than people realise, yes. I think. And I think you need to take that into account. But if you've been through all of that and you've done all your initial setup, and then you get to a point where you can sit and talk to people who've done it, there's a validation in that for them. And it's almost a safe space, I suppose, in some ways. But it must have felt like validation for you as well.
Yeah, I did. But it's not about me. It isn't
No,
about
but
me.
you're still the creator. You know, you
Yeah.
are ultimately the creator. You're bringing people together. You're also onboarding. You mentioned trusted partners earlier on, kind of founding trusted partners across like maintenance, tech, guest experience, stuff like that. How does vetting partners help operators avoid mistakes, potentially costly mistakes as well during a season like this?
You know, it's really interesting. I've spoken to so many operators over the last 6 months and asked them things like, you know, what are your challenges?
Yeah.
And you know what you've just said there, like there's a lot that sits behind running a short-term rental business, a lot. And I think what this does is it's the time, because the time that it takes to interview, on board various different companies, and let's be honest, there are so many of them here in Dubai, let alone beyond Dubai, is how to know which ones to use and which ones are going to align with your business and your business needs. And actually, what this platform sets to do is to give operators their time back in some respects, because we've already done that vetting process for them.
Right.
So there's 20 categories that sit across the trusted partner platform. And the aim is that we will have a few businesses that sit under each category. And each one has gone through a 6-stage onboarding and vetting process. And there'll be some that work for some and some that work for others. But the idea is to help save operators time and money, which, let's be honest, time is money, right? So that's the whole point of it, really.
Yeah, okay. And I guess to offer an alternative as well. Okay. Tell us about Short Stay Circle Hub. How does having this one central platform help operators move faster and smarter? Because again, I keep coming back to this, and it's like I'm like a broken record, but it is the busy season. It's the crazy season, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And it's exactly it. So we do lots of in-person. So everything that we've done to now has always been in person. And again, Dubai is a networking hub. You could go to a networking event every single minute of every single day if you really, really wanted to, right?
You could. You absolutely could.
Yeah, you could. So, you know, that's a lot. And I've been to quite a few networking events. I've been to smaller ones and I've been to big ones. And I've been trying to get feedback as well from what are the advantages and the disadvantages of various different structures of networking.
Okay.
Now, you can get so much from meeting people in person. I don't think that's ever going to change. But quite often, you don't know who's going to be at a networking event. And quite often, if there's more than 15, 20 people in the room, the chances are, in a space of time that you've got, you're not going to have a chance to meet everybody. You might not even know who you need to meet is there. What the hub does is it's like an extension of what happens in real life. So every trusted partner has 2 individual member profiles as well. So you go to a networking event for Short Stay Circle, and you can go back through your directory and you can see the people, the photos of the people that were there, see the businesses that they were in. And if you didn't have that opportunity to connect with them in that moment, you've got that opportunity to do business with them there and then as well.
You can network out of network.
You can network. That's the whole point of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I'm with you. I mean, the thing is, you kind of should. I very often think to myself, Dubai, it's almost more important in Dubai, that kind of personal relationship, it seems to me. And you kind of have to have that. And whether that's because we've got, somebody said to me the other day, I thought it was 180 nationalities here. Apparently it's 215 now.
Wow.
So we've added 35 more in the last 6 months. Where they're coming from, I don't know. But I mean, the point is, we should talk to each other more. That's a different conversation.
Yeah.
Look, I mentioned a figure earlier of 400%, so that's average ROI for businesses involved so far. I'm wondering how you quantify that for us. Give me an idea of that. But also, back to Christmas, New Year, the festive period again, where are operators seeing the biggest financial wins? So a two-pronged question.
Yeah, so in terms of quantifying that comes from speaking to the trusted partners, because obviously every deal and every business negotiation that happens is different, because also it's different businesses and different operator sizes and so forth.
Yeah.
But that's come from conversations from our main, what's now become our flagship events, if you like, which are our Evening Connect events. That's when we bring the whole ecosystem, if you like, together. So that comes specifically from that, but also some of that has led to offline business as well. So people have messaged me directly, and that figure potentially has changed even more over the last couple of months as well, from deals that I know have happened. That's include things like sponsorship deals. It's include like huge deals for.
Well, if you're underrepresenting yourself, good on you, because 40% is an impressive level to start with.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what about where operators are doing well? Where are the big financial wins coming from, do you think?
Do you know what?
Can you talk about that? Or
it's hard. It's interesting because obviously I don't own units myself. So what I'm doing is I'm the connector.
Sure.
So I'm going around and meeting with multiple short-term rental operators from across Dubai weekly, and trusted partners as well, and operators and suppliers. And all I can comment on, I think, really is the feedback that I get and the common threads and the common themes that I get. Now, last week we were hosting a panel at the World Realty Congress, which was the first time that short-term rental actually had been invited into this space.
Okay.
And we had Airbnb there, and we had two of the biggest short-term rental businesses here in Dubai there, and Emirates Insurance. And that was a really interesting discussion as well, and the first time that happened. So, again, it's sort of going off what feedback came from that, and what people on the ground are doing at the moment. And I think it's being prepared, to be honest, and being organised and having systems in place. Now, there's a lot that gets introduced quite quickly here in terms of like regulations. There are things that can change very quickly, and you don't necessarily have much time to implement them.
There's a real need to be nimble, isn't there?
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
And exactly that, nimble, prepared, have your CRM sorted. A lot of people are looking at how they can move into sort of like a more prop tech kind of advantage, but also I think the way in which you advertise yourself now as a short-term rental operator has changed, and rather than relying solely on one platform, on some of the bigger platforms that we've got, it's also looking at how you can reach out to almost allowing visitors and guests to come direct. So like for direct bookings as well. So spreading yourself out, and I think that's probably where you're going to get the most wins at the moment, and that's the feedback that I've had, is not relying purely on one platform.
Okay. You don't have any units here, you said. Are you looking to do that? Is that something
Not at the moment.
You're thinking about? You've probably got enough on your plate.
There's enough going on at the moment, yeah.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. We're running out of time, unfortunately. We've got about a minute left.
Okay.
In fact, we haven't even got a minute, but I need to ask you this. For anybody who's listening to this, watching you and I just now, operators, founders, service providers, whoever it is, what's the one thing they should do before the new year, or as the new year hits, to make sure they're up to date, they're with it, they're future-proofed in terms of their short-stay business?
I think it's about making sure that you have got you've got to make sure that you've got your systems in place. You've got to be organised. And like I said earlier, I would start looking at how to diversify where you're advertising your short-term rental business.
Okay. Katherine Reid is the founder of Short Stay Circle. It's a networking hub for the UAE's short stay ecosystem. We're going to have to get you back because I've got a load more questions. But for now, thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. Thank you for coming in. This is Mirror Business FM. You can find us online, all the usual platforms. Find us across social media. Don't forget the podcasts are available wherever you get your podcasts from. Everything we do is podcast in one form or another, shorts, etc. This is Mirror Business FM.
Mira Business FM, Dubai's home of business radio. Mira Business FM, where business comes to talk.
This is Mirror Business FM. It's the morning drive with me, Tim Elliott, and it's real estate now. Mario Volpi is here. I wrote you, Mario, a new intro this week, so let me just run this by you.
Can we have a drum roll?
Yeah, we could. We don't think ahead that much, so you just do it on the desk. Mario Volpi is here from Allegiance Real Estate. He's a columnist for the national newspaper and a regular contributor and a co-host of the Dubai Property Podcast. Not to mention, he's a leading light at regular gatherings of the Dubai chapter of the Chelsea Football Supporters Club. Someone has to be. So that was my intro to you today. And of course, where were you, dirty stop out until 2:30 this morning?
Well, I had great intentions in the sense that I came in, I had a very big lunch, so I didn't have dinner. I went home, got changed, went straight to bed.
Oh, really? Okay.
But there was a big accident on the 611, which meant that I didn't get home till a certain time. So I went to bed at 8.
Yeah.
And annoyingly, I woke up at about 9:15, so I only got like an hour or so sleep. And I set the alarm for 11 o'clock. So I tried to go back to sleep, but all I kept having was Chelsea songs in my head because we were playing the quarterfinals of the Carabao Cup, Chelsea versus Cardiff in Wales. So it could have been a potential banana skin, but fortunately we came out victors 3-1 for those that didn't see the game.
And that is your Chelsea Football Club update for another week.
And consequently, I went to bed at 2:30 this morning.
It's a normal thing. Remarkably, you seem to get through this segment every Wednesday morning, so we're on a winner. There's a lot to talk about today, and as you pointed out there, lots of numbers in the first kind of areas that we wanted to talk about. But I think it's really interesting because it's a nice kind of, two sides of a story, really. The affordable areas to buy and the affordable kind of end of the market to rent in the UAE. So where should we start? I suppose let's consider where's good to buy in Dubai, first of all. And I'll let you
So the most affordable areas, they're the same old suspects, really. It's places like International City, Discovery Gardens, and some parts of Dubai South. You can also add Dubai Silicon Oasis there as well.
Right.
So if we're talking prices, they basically range from $425 for a one-bedroom, and going up to sort of 600 for a two-bedroom. These are sort of starting prices. Now, these are the practical value locations where obviously the unit sizes are quite small compared to other areas, but of course the price per square foot is actually very low. If we look at mid-tier market locations, I would say you're probably looking JVC. I mentioned Dubai Silicon Oasis before, but they have some nice units there as well, so it could be in the mid-tier. JLT, Arjan. Now, one-bedrooms start around 600,000, and for two beds, I'd say around 800,000 dirhams. Now, if we then sort of counterbalance that with more premium locations, again, same old suspects, sort of downtown, Palm Jumeirah, Dubai Marina, Emaar Beachfront. I'd even say Blue Waters Island as well. Now, one-bedrooms, you're probably looking at around sort of 1.2, 1.3, all the way up to 2, in fact, even over 2 million. Downtown and the Palm often are at the top of that particular range. For the two beds, it's a little bit more difficult as there's going to be large variances for sea views or indeed larger penthouses, for example. But generally speaking, I'd say you're probably starting around 2 million and then going in excess of 4 million. And the prime waterfront units and Burj Khalifa and ones with Burj Khalifa views, they would sit well above the sort of city's median prices, to be honest.
Okay, and average apartment prices in Dubai for 2025? I'm just looking at your notes here it's a huge range, as you would expect, I suppose, but somewhere around 1.5 million would be. Is that a reasonable kind of average if somebody said to you?
Yeah, what is an average? Because there's so many anomalies. I always say when you have a basket of numbers, you're always supposed to take, the highest one off and the lowest one off because they do skew the figures. But 1.5 million will get you quite a lot of property. if you do scour around. Obviously, if you're looking for a villa on the Palm, it's not gonna get you very much. But
Yeah, that wouldn't get you a carport, would it?
No, it wouldn't.
Actually, that's probably true.
No.
You can use that one. So that was Dubai. Let's look at Abu Dhabi as well.
Yeah, so the most affordable areas there are sort of the outskirts of Musafa, Al Bahia, Najmat. Now, here the prices range from around 350 to about 550. They're for the one bedrooms. The two beds, I would say you're again looking around 550 as a start point, and could go up to around 900, possibly even up to the million mark. Now, the mid-market locations would be selected pockets of Al Reem Island, Khalifa City A, and Al Nayan, where prices for one beds, they would start around 600, and for the two beds, I'd say they'd start around 900. Top tier, Sadia Island, that's the cultural capital, definitely. Al Khalidia, prime towers, Western Corniche, specifically towers like Nation Towers. Here, one beds, they'd start around 850, I would have thought, and two beds start around 1.5, 1.6, going up to 3 million plus. But for prime waterfront, it would definitely be Sadiat and Corniche locations. These would be the trophy addresses and trade at a premium to the city's median prices.
Yeah, Cornish still is kind of the gem. It's the in the crown, isn't it? Yeah. Let's head towards Sharjah. We're talking affordable locations in Sharjah now.
Now here, Sharjah really does start to bring the prices down. I mean, you're looking at sort of areas such as Old Al Khan fringes, possibly Al Majaz. And here prices for one bed, they start around the 250 mark. I mean, that's really quite affordable.
It's a huge difference.
Yeah, it is. I mean, obviously, that would be the lowest if you look on websites like Property Finder and Beirut. For two beds, again, just a little bit more, 100,000 more, 350. Mid-tier, again, certain areas of Al Majaz, Al Nahda, and some parts of Al Zahir. Here, one beds would be around 335 to around 900, and the two beds would start at around 450. And the highest and best locations would be the waterfront at Al Majaz, Al Zahir Premium Towers, Al Khan Corniche, basically within the newer towers. One beds would start from around 600, going all the way up to around 1 million, and two beds from around 1 million, possibly up to around 1.6, 1.7.
I should point out, actually, whenever you say 600 or 900, you are talking about 600,000.
Yes, of course. Yeah, not 600 dirhams. No, 600,000 dirhams. Yeah, I do beg your pardon.
Looking at Ajman next.
Yeah, now this is the smallest emirate, and actually it's the cheapest. One beds here can be found in sort of older blocks or apartments on the outskirts of town, where literally they will start from. I mean, I found the cheapest one at 160,000 dirhams. I mean, that's very, very good value. Yeah. I can't say how good the finish is or how old the building is, but 160 is obviously very, very good value. Yeah. But at even the two beds, 300,000 to start with, going up to around 450. These are for the more affordable end of the market. Mid-market locations would be parts of Al Rashidiyah near the city centre. Here, one beds, they'd start around 285, and the two beds from around 400,000. Higher value would be waterfront locations in selected Corniche towers. One beds, they're going to start from around 550, and the two beds around 700,000, going above the million.
Okay, well, we're going all over the Emirates, and of course we do need to head to Ras Al Khaimah. So most affordable there?
Yeah, so there again, older inland or older town centres. One and two bedroom apartments actually start for as low as 275. When I was doing my research, I found one bedroom starting at 275, but I also found a two bedroom at that level. I think probably it was just a one-off, but generally speaking, one beds would start from around 275. Mid-market would be found in Al Hamra village or the sort of older marina buildings. One bedrooms there around 600,000, and two beds starting from 760,000. Now, when we're talking premium, it's got to be Al Marjan Island or obviously the beachfront resort apartments, where one bedrooms they're around 1.3 million. I mean, there's a lot of activity there, a lot of projects, a lot of development, and that's why they've now crept over the million. 2 bedrooms, I would say approximately 1.75 million to around 2 million.
Right, okay. And I'm just looking at the news this week, a couple of developments that have come up, branded residences in RAC, there's a lot going on, and everything is just, it's selling out like that, isn't it?
It is. I mean, and not just RAC. There's a company called Beyond, which is a subsidiary of Omniat, which launched a new sort of, let's call it a master community with just one particular tower. Japanese wellness themed, everything like this. And Beyond are also what I would call affordable luxury, because Omniat is a very luxurious developer and sells a lot of properties on the Palm at multi-million dirham sums. And literally, it just sold out in hours. There were 370 odd apartments, 375 apartments, and they just sold out. And in fact, they had such a demand that the next tower, there was 3 or 4 towers they were launching, but not on the same day, that they had such a demand for Tower 1 that they basically opened up Tower 2, and Tower 2 is pretty much sold out. I think there's about 3 units left. So that's how fast the market is right now.
Yeah, I'm just looking at I was reading a news story earlier this week, branded luxury developments. We've talked about branded stuff at length. It's going to be something like 25% of new freehold supply by 2030. This is Ras Al Khaimah I'm talking about. But just to give you an idea, the Emirates, RAC's fastest selling project, Mondrian Al Marjan Island Beach Residences. It's a very nice beachfront development, as you know. 704 million dirhams in sales in 2 hours, 200 units snapped up, gone. 100 units to be released soon. But it's just the levels.
Yeah, but if I can give a bit of context to the listeners, the way this works now is that a developer will then inform the market, mainly the agents, the brokers, that they will be launching X.
Yeah.
They give you some snippets. They never give you a price, which I find hilarious, because you're trying to sell something and you don't actually know the price. They sort of tickle you a bit with, per square foot prices, and it's likely to be this. And if they've done other projects, they said, well, it's going to be similar to that, plus 10%, because they always add more for every new launch. And then what agents have to do is obviously talk to their clients and try to educate them, especially the new to Dubai clients or the new to RAC clients, that the speed that we move at is lightning. And for some nationalities, especially Europeans, Germans specifically, but not specifically just to Germans, but I've got stories about Germans taking a day or two to think and then wanting to buy and finding that it's gone. So I always say Germans are a little bit cautious, but Europeans in general, and educating them on the speed of it, so that they understand that if they do want to plunge, they've got to go all in. They can't just dip their toe in. They've got to go all in. And of course, we then organize what's known as expressions of interest, where the agent will take a check if the person is here. If the person isn't here, then there can be links that you can send some money. It's important to note that nothing happens to this money. It's just, as it says, an expression of interest. Here's some money. And then when they actually launch, all the developers have already a stack of expressions of interest, and all people do is say, I'll have that one, I'll have that one, I'll have that one, and that's how it goes so quickly.
Yeah.
So for me, it was important that whoever's listening would understand that it's not 375 people in a queue. Well, it kind of is. It's agents, but there's much more than 375. It's oversubscribed all the time. The actual launch party, they flew in some Japanese drummers, and we were. This was on Island B for Dubai Islands, and fireworks displays and everything. And it's, like I said before, it's like shows. You have all these actors and actresses coming down and doing songs and playing gigs, and It's mind blowing. One better than the other.
Well, it is. This is the point. It is mind blowing. But to borrow a well worn phrase, get your towel on the sunbed as soon as you can.
Yeah, that's a very good expression. You do literally have to reserve it. But like I say, for all these people that are taking the plunge, I can guarantee you that there's a lot who lost property beforehand through being perhaps, for Dubai standards, being a little bit cautious.
Yeah.
They're not being cautious because, we're not selling hotcakes, even though they are selling like hotcakes. We are selling property, we're selling investments, and, people should do their due diligence. And that's important, that you use the right agent who has the right connections, and obviously you pick the right developer, look at the history, look at what they've delivered. But with the escrow law, that also, in some respects, doesn't matter. As long as they've done business abroad and they do complete, the escrow laws do protect all the investors as well.
As always, Mario, the questions are starting to come in here. So let's go to just a few, if that's okay. Charmaine's first. Hi, Mario. I saw your episode last time about monthly rental checks, which we talked about for a while. I'm looking for a new apartment now. Agents still ask for 4 to 6 checks. Can you clarify? I guess Charmaine means by clarifying, can I use an alternative method? I'm not absolutely sure.
Yeah, we're still quite traditional when it comes to payments. I mean, Property Finder and another company, Keeper, actually got together and organised this sort of 12-check scenario.
Yeah.
But there's no such thing as a free lunch. Obviously, I think the rent is a little bit higher anyway to allow for that to actually happen. So, it's all about negotiating with the landlord. Agents can sometimes be a bit protective of their clients, and you don't necessarily get to speak to the landlord, so you have to obviously negotiate everything through the broker. And if the broker is a little bit stick in the mud and won't even communicate your wishes if somebody wants to really pay in a lot more checks. But there isn't really a solution at the moment.
No.
Other than, I wish it does come through sooner. That there are credit checks now, and to check your own credibility, to be able to pay in more checks. I would say, look, if she's rented before and had a good relationship with her previous landlord, there is nothing wrong with asking a previous landlord to give you a reference, for example. Now,
how often do people do that?
Well,
there's no reason why you can't.
They don't. But if she's looking for solutions to try and perhaps show her credit worthiness and her ability as a tenant, either a previous landlord's reference to then show the agent to say, look, I've been a tenant for so many years. I've always paid my rent. Therefore, you're not taking a risk on me. Situations happen all the time. I get that. But generally speaking, if you can demonstrate that you're a good tenant, there's no reason why somebody couldn't. Money is money at the end of the day, whether it's paid in 6 checks, 12 checks, or 1 check. I mean,
it's a really good point, I think.
That's what I would try to do to try and buck the trend a little bit. Perhaps an employer's reference as well to show longevity in your job if all those boxes are ticked.
Yeah, I mean, there is a direct debit system that that some people use, but it really, you're absolutely right, and the kind of stick in the mud analogy is probably fair. There is still this kind of archaic system of we do use checks for this.
If you're buying, if you're renting through a company, you could also pay in 1 check and therefore get, through a credit card, for example, assuming you have enough funds, etc. Or if not 1 check, a couple of goes. And then, of course, you can pay that off monthly. That would be another way. But, of course, there's interest on top. So unless you can finish it per month.
It's not easy. Charmaine, I hope that helped in some way. Leanne is asking you, Mario, with so many new launches, is it still safer to buy an off-plan property today, or should I stick to ready units to avoid handover delays?
If I can address the handover delays, I would say that they were more prevalent years ago. What seems to have happened now is that not all, but the majority of all the developers that are, especially the big players that are in the market, have realized that they need to have the contractors in-house. Now, when you've got the contractor or the builder, who's actually going to build the thing, as part of, on the payroll, as it were, then the developer has control. And so those kind of delays, whilst I can't say we are immune to them, they are not really happening. And in fact, a lot of developers are delivering earlier than they should. But of course, if someone's on a payment plan, they may not have the next payment, so the developer is happy to wait for the payment plan, but they are able to deliver it. I suppose her own circumstances, she needs to look at, what are her circumstances. If you're buying ready property, it's ready now, you can see it, feel it, touch it. Where does the sun rise? Is it a bright flat? Is it a dark flat if it's an apartment? So there are many different facets there. But certainly I don't think that she should worry unnecessarily regarding the delays. Legally, a developer can actually be delayed by a period of 12 months beyond the date of the SPA. I know that's also a nuisance because if you're buying to live in it and you're renting, it means you're going to have to rent another year. Beyond that, there is legal redress should you wish to take it further. But like I say, these things, maybe 10 years ago or 5 to 10 years ago, they were more prevalent. Now, you really don't hear much of it. Now, if it's a smaller developer, then of course, maybe they don't have the resources and they certainly don't have the contractors in-house. Then yes, there probably would be delays, in which case, if that's an issue for her, I would say either steer clear of those or then buy secondary market.
Okay, we're talking property with Mario Volpi from Allegiance Real Estate. He's a Senior VP for Investment Advisory. You may also know Mario from the Dubai Property Podcast and from his column in the National newspaper. You can ask questions if you'd like. info@mira.fm is the email address. You can also WhatsApp us, whatsapp.mira.fm. But the number, if you need it, is the country code for the UAE, 971 522 789 567. That's right. I got there in the end. Mario is with me on the morning drive today. Let's go. Actually, there's a few more questions, Mario. I was going to jump to the more affordable end of the market to rent, but we'll save that for a few minutes. So here we go. Ben, Mohammed, Leanne. No name on this, but it's interesting. I want to sell my apartment in JVC. Very popular area. Which renovation actually adds more value? A brand new kitchen or upgrading to smart home features?
It's a good question, and my opinion would be the kitchen, because not everybody is techie. It's all well and good pressing a button and your curtains open up. It's all well and good having an app on your phone that puts the AC on in the summer if you're not on a timer, but then I would say put it on a timer anyway. So now kitchens obviously are quite subjective as well. Do you go for gloss? Do you go for matte? Do you go for white? Do you go for wood? Do you go in the look? But as long as people remain neutral, and especially if they're if they're doing it, they should always do it for themselves to enjoy.
Yeah.
But if they're an investor and they're buying a property that requires work, and therefore you are buying it to sell it, keep as neutral as possible, clean lines. You can still add some gadgets in a kitchen, like a coffee maker or a coffee machine or something like that, or a cooler for your grape, etc. And but I would say definitely the kitchen. The kitchen would do it.
I immediately looked and I thought he's going to say kitchen. I know he's going to say kitchen because it is that thing where people will always walk in, and you're right. Blinds heading up automatically at sunrise or down at sunset, that's all fine. But people will always walk and be like, "Oh, nice new kitchen."
No, definitely. And we've had developments in the past that the USP has been the smart home technology.
Sure.
But in the end, people bought them I have to say, not necessarily for that. They were add-ons. I don't think people say, "Oh, I better buy that because it's got a curtain that opens up, so I don't have to sort of."
Nice
get
to
up."
have, but really,
Yeah, where like you said, the kitchen is a showpiece. Now, if you're a chef or you enjoy cooking, then of course it's a must. But that's also why some of these fancy apartments, the penthouses, the villas, they have what's known as the show kitchen, which is the one that's visible, fairly minimalistic. Sometimes it can also be closed and opened with doors. And then you have what some people call the dirty kitchen or the working kitchen, which is at the back where all the preparation gets done.
yeah, I'm with you. Let me just start. You've been doing real estate for many years. I shall not say how many, but for some time. You have some experience in this. Do you remember that thing years ago with people saying, when you're selling a house, bake a loaf of bread.
Oh,
get the coffee
yeah.
machine. Is that still is that a thing?
Well, I don't know that it was ever a
Was
thing
it ever
here,
a thing? Yeah,
here in Dubai. But then smells do drive sales. You only have to walk into Dubai Mall or some of these malls where they've got that essence in the air. There's just something that it's really nice. It's a fresh smell. So the baking bread, the coffee on the go. It definitely was a thing sort of in the 80s, 90s perhaps, when I was first starting out, but that was in the UK. Here, I've never actually heard of anybody saying, "Well, I better put a coffee on for the aroma," rather than just for a brew.
I think people are missing a trick if they're not doing it. As far as I'm concerned, it would drive a sale. As far as I'm concerned,
Scented candles. There you go. That's the other one. Let's do it.
Very nice. What have we got here? Carisha, I think is the way you pronounce this person's name. With the new Metro Blue Line stations confirmed for areas like Al Waqar, for Mirdif, should I buy there now, or has the Metro Premium already been priced in by sellers?
That's a great question, and this person has preempted my podcast for the weekend. So I'm going to mention it. Actually, no, there's time. There is time. It's not until 2029 that the metro is actually going to be opened. The metro seems to follow the nines. It was 2009. It was
9909. That's right.
And and the minutes were also in the nines. So no doubt they'll do the same. So 2029. So we have a good 3 years, if not a tad more, for things to appreciate. But anything that is near to transport, especially stations, and I mentioned also in previous podcasts, perhaps even on this show, Etihad Rail as well, anything that links the city with the transportation of something new like a train or indeed a new metro line is definitely going to have an impact on real estate. So if this person is interested as an investment, pick your station. Buy something that is going to be close. Obviously, what we don't know exactly is where that location is going to be. I mean, they mention the area. They mention Creek Harbour. They mention Jadaf. They mention Al Waqar. They mention, International City is actually going to have 3 stations, one of which is underground. So, the Creek one apparently is going to be the world's tallest metro station. Now, by that, I'm meaning in the structure. They're not going to put it up high. It's actually on stilts. But anyway,
look, stranger things have happened here.
But let's
metro
answer the question. Go for it now. You've got plenty of time.
All right. And then Mohammed, this is also the Blue Line. So Mohammed says, I live in Silicon Oasis with the Blue Line confirming a metro station there. I'm thinking you're going to say yes, but I'll ask you anyway. Do you think rent prices will increase?
Well, I think with metro stations coming, if we're talking rents, then you're going to appeal to commuters. Now, obviously, Silicon Oasis is an area that will go up in value anyway because it's a technological hub in that respect. There are schools there. There's community. There's internet. There's jobs there. So people will probably be coming to Silicon Oasis to work rather than going from Silicon Oasis wherever. But it's just the connectivity. So naturally, if we were to say all things being equal, prices of rents will have to go up, because that's what happened in JLT, that's what happened in Business Bay when the metro is there. But equally, the sale prices go up. Having said all of that, in years to come, if there's going to be more and more handovers, it will actually be the rents that will probably suffer price-wise, because these properties have been bought already.
Yeah.
So although they'll be handing over in droves, apparently, in years to come, the pressure will then be on, well, who's going to live there? And it's going to be tenants. And if there's too many of them, that's where prices might come down. But certainly, any station is going to have a positive impact for a landlord, and perhaps a negative one for a tenant in that respect.
I want to get to the affordable end of the market for rent, but there is another question. This is Uzair, and it's the blue line. I live in International City. It's cheaper to rent compared to other places in Dubai, other areas. Do you think I should worry about the rent increase because of the new blue metro line?
Honestly, right now, there's no point worrying about something that hasn't happened, number one.
Sure, yeah.
Number two, it is, if we're just looking about the impact of the station, of course, rents go up, rents go down, depending on the market anyway. So those are market dynamics. And rents are very affordable, obviously, in International City, because obviously the prices, the sale prices are affordable. Having said that, the return on investment to a landlord, to an owner, is very high, because although the rents are still affordable, they are, they're not bad for a landlord, is what I'm saying. If you consider the price of the property, I mean, they're getting returns of 9%, 10%, which is amazing, because the average is between 5% and 6%, possibly 7% in Dubai. They're getting nearly double that. So I would say to this person, honestly, right now, don't worry. I mean, if he's going to remain in the same property, he will be remaining in there at least for 3 years. Rents, if they go up, they'll go up in line with, obviously, the smart rental index. And I would just say, as long as the landlord's given 90 days notice of the changes to the contract, and the smart index allows for any increase, then obviously the increase will happen. Other than that, I think he should be fine for a few years anyway. But nothing necessarily happens overnight like that. It's gradual.
Yeah, Uzair, I hope that helps. Let's have a look at the affordable end of the market to rent. We had a good kind of ballpark area in terms of sale and sales figures. So let's look at the 3 most affordable areas for apartments, and Dubai is where we're starting, obviously.
So I'll do it in reverse order. So we'll start in 3rd place, and it's actually Dubai Silicon Oasis. Now here the general average rent is 67,000 for this location. That's taking into consideration everything, but you can rent a studio for around 42,000 dirhams, a 1-bedroom apartment for around sort of 63,000, and it will cost you just over 90,000 for a 2-bedroom apartment. In second spot, it's Al Nada. Now, this is the on the Dubai side, so it's the Dubai-Sharjah borders, but it's on the Dubai side. Here, the general average rent is 60,000, and that would be broken down to 41,000 for a studio, 52 for a 1-bedroom, and 68,000 for a 2-bedroom. And in first place, again, it's our friend International City. Now, the general average there is 43,000 dirhams, and that's broken down to around sort of 27,000 dirhams for a studio, 52,000 for a 1-bedroom, and 71,000 for a 2-bedroom. Now, when I band these prices out there, I don't want the listeners to say, oh, Mario said it's 71, or Mario said it's this. These are sort of general figures taken from portals and websites. Of course, there will be some landlords in International City who are holding out for that bit more, or if someone is more keen to actually have a tenant than that last dirham, it might even be a tad cheaper. But either way, you'll see that actually these are very, very reasonably priced rents, and now with all these new metro lines coming, for sure they will creep up, but it still means that people can actually live in Dubai dare I say, fairly frugally, and not have to spend too much money on transportation.
Yeah, well, transportation is so important. If you can make your life a little bit easier, there's nothing like it, is there? And the point of the averages here, Mario, is that ballpark figures are useful in that they give you an idea if you're looking at a location, and it just allows you to do that kind of compare and contrast thing.
Yeah, no, definitely. And, I always say to people, do your due diligence. People move to certain areas for many reasons, mainly work. If they're singles, if it's families, then it's the school, isn't it? It's the school run that often will determine school first, job second, and sort of leisure third, if you want to live by the beach.
You just described my life there beautifully. Top 3 affordable areas. Let's look at the cheapest, or more affordable is the best, the more charitable way to put it. Villas and townhouses.
Yeah, so again, in third spot, I would say it's Dubai South. Here, the average is around 168,000. Three bedrooms, however, will average around 140, because the 4 bedrooms will set you back around 183. Now, Dubai South is an area that is up and coming. You've got Expo, you've got a lot going on there. So the 5-bedroom ones are actually as high as 285,000. In second spot, it's Mirdif. Now, the general average rent is around 155. Made up as just under 140,000 for a 3-bedroom, 168,000 for a 4-bedroom, and a much more affordable 185,000 for a 5-bedroom home. In first place, it's actually Damac Hills 2, where the average rent is 128,000, and you'll find a 3-bedroom townhouse at just over 100,000. In fact, it's 103,000 dirhams. 103,000 dirhams out. 4 bedrooms at 132,000, and for a 5-bedroom, 146,000. So that is really good value, as you can see.
Well, that is. I'm also looking at you doing the scratch of the beard there, because that seems, I don't know, is good luck.
Well, exactly. When you look at sort of the area kind of I live in Marina and JBR, I mean, there, a 2-bedroom is going to fetch you between 130 and 150, let's say. Yeah. Again, on average, depending whether it has a view or no view. Yeah. Here, you can get yourself, a 5-bedroom house. Townhouse, obviously, is not necessarily a villa. And with the infrastructure that is going on, these areas which seem so far away, and that is why they're at this sort of level, because those areas have to have everything as the community included. The medical facilities, the school or a school, the shopping centre, etc., etc. It has to all be inside, because it is a bit of a trek to actually go out there. But I remember when, it made me sound old now, but in 2008, when they were sort of doing Arabian ranches, I thought, well, no, that's just miles away. Yeah. And then of course Sakim Road now, without traffic, it's a 5-10 minute drive to the Mall of the Emirates. With traffic, maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes if there's a lot of traffic. But generally speaking, these things, the city is growing, but it's condensing with all the infrastructure that's being spent. So right now, very affordable, especially if you've got a big family. You'd need a car though, for sure. So
we do, but then I guess all the roads are being reworked around Damac Hills too, and around Arabian Ranches too. So that's going to change again. So I don't know what impact that's going to have. But I'm looking at that thing, a 3-bedroom townhouse, 103,000 dirhams. I know it's an average, and I know you can't.
Well, no, that's the lowest. It's not the average. The average is 128, but it's not the average lowest. It's the lowest.
It's the lowest of the averages that we used. I'll get there in the end. I know what I'm trying to say. You're right, but it just seemed it really took me by surprise. Another question for you, by the way: difference between a townhouse and a villa.
Well, villas tend to be what here we call standalone. In England, we used to call them detached.
Right.
You had detached, semi-detached, and terrace. Yeah. But if you say those words here, some people don't know what you're talking about. So that's why they say standalone, which basically means that the villa is not attached to any other dwelling that doesn't belong to you.
Often a walled.
Yeah, walled kind of area potentially. Well. That's right. But then what's a townhouse? Sorry, tends to be on 3 levels, ground, first, and second. In certain places, they might have a basement as well, in which case they would be on more floors. It's just another way to describe, dare I say, just a cheaper house, a more affordable house, because the way they build them is more akin to city centre living. Whereas if you think of a villa, you might be thinking a house out in the countryside. Again, I'm talking about in Europe and outside, not just necessarily here.
Okay. Follow-up question from, this is Michael, producer Michael, who's, I guess, outside of this studio door listening, poised with his camera, most likely. Just thinking out loud, since a lot of areas will have metro stations, blue, red, green, maybe it'll make rent cheaper because there's nothing special now, no more metro advantages for landlords. Well, I suppose.
Eventually, yeah.
Ultimately.
He's probably right. I mean, right now, we only have, was it 2 lines at the moment? Red and green, is it?
Red and green, and then blue's coming. Yeah.
And with the third one, look at the sort of spaghetti of tube maps of the UK, of London, for example. That really is a spaghetti of tubes, as it were.
Yeah.
When it gets to that level, then of course, what's the difference between West Brompton and Ravenscourt Park? There isn't any, as long as you are there.
Yeah.
The difference would then be outside of London. That's when the outer skirts, when Dubai becomes, dare I say, so large that we're going down and you're touching Saudi Arabia or something that may not be within reach. That's where those places will be that much cheaper. But the main central hub from north, south, east, west, if you're connected to the tube line or the metro line, there shouldn't be that much of a difference unless you're talking about, what people want. I want to live in the marina because it's got water rather than I want to live over here because it's got a golf course. So then it's just down to preference.
I was grinning there when you said, when Dubai grows and it touches Saudi Arabia. And I thought, I don't. And then I thought, no, hold on a minute.
Well, it already does, doesn't it? Well, not Dubai, Abu Dhabi does.
Yeah, well, exactly. So, the growth is, it's quantifying that growth.
The thing is, we've got so much, Abu Dhabi has so much land. Dubai, to a degree, we can just go down. If you're looking at a map, down away from the sea. I mean, why not?
Yeah. Okay. I wonder if that's how town planners do it, and people
shrug their shoulders and go, why not?
Let's give it a go. Sometimes I think that's how it works. Social media comment for you. Michael's just sent this through. Somebody says, I saw your video about rent increases in Abu Dhabi. I don't believe rent will increase in Abu Dhabi when Disneyland opens.
Interesting. I would love to understand why this gentleman or lady thinks that.
There's no indication of why this person believes that, whether it's just plucked out of the ether or I don't know. But I would suggest, yeah.
Look, there are theme parks already in Yas, so they're already there. But this is the OG. We're talking Disney here. We're talking
I love your OG comparison, but you're right.
This is the Big Daddy.
It is, yeah.
Look, will long-term rents spike? I think they will go up, but they won't necessarily exponentially go mental. But what will go high will be the holiday lets. It has to be. Yeah. Unless people are staying in hotels. But if you're coming with your family, you're going to have to take often 2 hotel rooms. So you might as well take an apartment. That means that, okay, you're on holiday, but it means you can cook something if you've got a small child and some pasta or something. You're not necessarily doing a full-blown meal. But what I'm saying is
just some pasta or
something.
Well,
of course,
it's a Mario.
Body pasta. What I'm saying here is that that type of accommodation is bound to spike.
Yeah.
So I would encourage the person to sort of give a reason as to why they think that way, and of course they're entitled to that. And listen, who's to say he's wrong? But it all points to when a facility, when something iconic comes, when a venue nearby. I mean, in the UK we used to call it the Starbucks effect. When a Starbucks originally, I'm going back 20 plus 20, 30 years. When a coffee shop or something like that opened up, that was gentrifying the high street. And things, it showed that people were moving to that area. Disney has got to be a game changer for Yas. Or if nothing else, it will just continue with its momentum of being the entertainment island of the Emirates.
Yeah, I spoke with somebody years ago that used to use the phrase multiplicators, which I don't think is the correct phrase, but it makes the point, doesn't it? That there are some things that are multiplicators, and what that means is people are interested, people come, more people come, and that it snowballs from there. And I think that would be my opinion as well. But thanks for the thought online. A couple of questions we'll try and get to in a minute, but I want to get through some of the things that you've been talking on the podcast, because I thought this was interesting. For those people that think Ras Al Khaimah has finished offering good property returns, maybe thinking, I've missed the boat here. New stats on visitor numbers, and I know you've been following this, and it's not the case. There's some room here, isn't there?
Yeah, so these new statistics just confirm that the demand for actually hotel rooms in Ras Al Khaimah will actually continue to outstrip the current supply and the supply in years ahead. Because whilst this study was by Colliers International, they expect hotel rooms to rise from the current 7,472 rooms to a whopping 16,230 around.
That's 140% growth or something.
That's by 2030, so there is still time for it to grow. It also confirmed that demand is actually forecast to be just under 22,500 by then. Now that's going to lead to a deficit of close to 6,300 rooms. And by the time the Wynn Hotel opens up in 2027, the demand is probably going to exceed supply by close to 8,500 hotel rooms. So, because look, the visitor numbers in RAK, they're expected to also grow. Last year, they had 1.3 million, and they're expecting this to get to 5.3 million by 2030. And that's all driven by the Wynn Hotel, the casino. Obviously, RAK is the staycation for us. We love to go to RAK from that point of view. But now all of a sudden, it has extra dimensions. Don't forget, it's the thrill seekers capital. You've got the longest zip line in the world. I think it's 3.5 kilometers. Madness as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, so you've got the thrill seekers, you've got the trekkers, the hikers, the walkers, as it were. I don't mean zombies. And of course, you've then got the seaside and now the casino. But the total overnight guests is actually expected to rise from 4.5 million to 9.6 million. So that's just overnight. That's just one night stay.
Yeah.
So honestly, I think RAK still has some way to go. And don't forget, it won't just be one casino in Ras Al Khaimah. There will be others. Wynn obviously has the contract, and they'll be doing deals with other groups, I would imagine.
Yeah, for sure. It's just that figure. Annual visitors to RAK expected to grow 1.3 million last year. That's a good situation to be in. 2030 is 4 years away. 5.3 million. It's a million people a year growth.
But don't forget that we are adding a dimension to the Emirates that isn't legally there today.
Sure. And
to a degree, everybody likes to have a bit of a tipple here from the point of view of like the Grand National is the housewife's choice. We're not talking about gamblers who are hooked on it or whatever. People will enjoy a night out in Ras Al Khaimah. They've had a lovely meal at a hotel. They've enjoyed their day at the beach. And it's just something different. There will be those that will do it once. I went to Vegas, for example. I went to a casino once to put my money in my slot machine. Did I do the tables? No, because I know I'd lose my shirt. So I knew I'd want to just keep my shirt on. And I don't mean streaking either. So
no, I'd rather you kept your shirt on.
So the thing is, people will do it just to say, I've done it.
Yeah.
But there are so many. There is a big pent-up demand. When I think about the time I went to Hong Kong, gambling is illegal in China. And yet the boat from Hong Kong to Macau, where is basically the Las Vegas of Asia, and it's a replication of Las Vegas with the MGM and the Venetian and all sorts of other hotels. And I walked into this gaming area, and I just naturally, as a tourist, took my phone out to take a picture. I nearly got rugby tackled by the security guards to ask me to delete it because
Really?
Yeah, because there are people in there gambling or playing the machines that might be prominent Chinese people who are not allowed to because it's not allowed in China. So all I'm saying is that there will be a lot of migration from the point of view of tourism. And I think RAC has really put a feather in their cap with this and stolen a march on all the other Emirates.
It's going to create huge interest. There's no doubt about that. I did want to talk about transportation with you. We did a little bit talking about the blue line of the metro, but we'll save that, maybe that story for next week because we're out of time, unfortunately, Mario. It's just one of those things. Mario Volpi is Senior VP for Investment Advisory at Allegiance Real Estate. He is a columnist with The National, writes about all manner of real estate-related matters, and you may also have heard him on the Dubai Property Podcast. And very often on a Tuesday night, you might run into him singing Chelsea songs.
At the Belgian Beer Cafe, yeah.
It's entirely possible. Oh, and one more thing. Nice glasses.
Thank you. I tried the ensemble of the green today.
I saw it. I saw the watch and the
watch.
It works well. Good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Mario Volpi with us at Mirror Business FM. Don't forget, leave us a like, hit subscribe wherever you're joining us from. Get in touch. Let us know what you think, how you feel about the content that we produce, how you feel about our guests. And remember, everything is available as a podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. This is Mirror Business FM.
Mirror Business FM, Dubai's home of business radio. Mira Business FM. The sound of success.
It's the morning drive here on Mirror Business FM with me, Tim Elliott, and we're talking new roads, new rules, but the same traffic. Why UAE congestion persists and what comes next for mobility. That's really the crux of what we're going to be talking about. This week we've seen updates to UAE traffic laws, major investment in the metro and rail for a sustained period of time, and there's always the continued talk of the future of transport, from autonomous vehicles, from the air taxis we're going to be seeing soon. So are we fixing traffic is a question, or are we just moving it around? And also, what really works when it comes to moving people, not just moving cars around a city? Now, Martin Tillman is a transport and mobility planning advisor at TMP Consult. He has advised governments and developers across the Middle East and internationally on road networks, public transport, sustainable mobility, and future transport systems. And he's here with us in the studio. Martin, good to meet you.
Yeah, thank you, and likewise, and I'm very happy to be here. Thanks.
Well, we appreciate you coming in. There's loads to talk about. I don't know if we're going to have enough time, really, so let's just try and get through whatever we can. And I think it's really interesting. You work at this kind of, what's the best way to describe it? An intersection, really, to use traffic parlance, where today's traffic challenges sit. So the infrastructure side, the urban development side, the human behavior side, the variable side. It's an ever-shifting kind of conundrum. Can I start with what we're all living through, i.e. the constant road expansion across Dubai, across the UAE, and yet congestion is just, it's a daily reality for us. Why is that?
So, and I think it's a really good place to start, because that's where most people sort of experience Dubai. So I'm thinking like the school drop-off, the commute to and from work. It's the daily reality for many people who live and work in Dubai.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. There's been a significant investment in terms of highway development here. I mean, personally, when I'm driving around Dubai, I constantly see new roads opening up, new intersections, new underpasses, new flyovers, and yet there is still congestion. And I think that question is a valid one. Why, with all the increasing the road infrastructure, why is there still that congestion there? And I'd say it's roads. Roads are there to provide capacity. Roads don't fail particularly. They just fill up. Right? So what happens is we're getting, and Dubai is just going through an incredibly successful period in its time, in its city status. Population has now grown, it's like 1 million extra now. I think we're up to about 4 million, just over 4 million population.
Yeah, quite right.
And with all of that, there's more economic activity, there's more movement, there's more desire, there's more leisure. And with all of that going on, of course, we've now got people needing to move more. So yes, you can build more roads, but there is actually much more activity that is going on alongside that. So it fills up.
Well, it does. You make a really good point, actually, because I'll be sailing along with the traffic, and I will be on a road I've never been on before, and I'll literally be looking around thinking, another new road. The thing is, let's look at news yesterday. Okay, Sharjah implemented a law, and what it was to regulate lane usage. Now, that was November the 1st. Since then, police have recorded, I need to get this right, 30,000 violations for non-compliance with designated routes. So what this law does is it defines specific lanes for delivery bikes, heavy vehicles, motorcycles, buses, etc., introduced to enhance safety on the road. So it's clear that the authorities are constantly kind of evolving efforts to reconsider and reinforce road safety. It's not that the roads are, things are not getting more dangerous. It's simply that Dubai's hit 4 million population. Abu Dhabi has hit 4 million population. I think the UAE is something like 10 million. Your point is exactly right. Roads fill up. Don't they?
Yes.
That's just what happens. We have to live with that.
Absolutely. And again, that point about delivery drivers in the lanes, that's been a significant economic boost, right? So in the last, I don't know, like since probably COVID time, I would imagine there's been this much greater use of those delivery bikes for delivering food and goods around the UAE. And that that's another additional use that has come onto the road network that perhaps wasn't there before. So introducing new rules is very important. I mean, for example, things like everyone has to wear a seatbelt, not using your mobile phone in your hand while you're driving. These are logical rules that that are being implemented and fully implemented here in the UAE. It just makes logical sense for increasing safety for everyone in Dubai, so that we're all playing to the same level, and we're not sort of, I'm not doing one thing and you're doing something else.
Does building more roads actually solve congestion, or does it just shift the problem elsewhere? Is there a point where road building delivers diminishing returns?
Absolutely. Absolutely
Really?
right. So, I mean, I used to work in Hong Kong. So, and in that, when I went to Hong Kong for the first time, I was shocked how they did it, because it's a limited land space, not like Dubai where we can build out a little bit. And they're very sort of concentrated, high density. But the roads there were like not just at ground level, they were like double-decker roads. And then there were parts where they were like triple-decker, because they'd have underground above and above.
Right.
And then you'd be crossing over. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And still, the roads were congested. And that's in a city where they have, of course, a good metro network, bus network, taxi network as well. So by building more roads, as I said, those roads tend to fill. It's something called sort of induced demand. Like if you're providing additional road capacity, it's sort of encouraging people to say, well, that's what they want us to use. So there's additional roads, so then we've got an additional reason to use it. It's now quicker for me to perhaps drive there. So it doesn't take long for that to induce more people to try and use that road. And you're absolutely right. It shifts the problem. So either it shifts it geographically to a point where the road hasn't been widened, or it shifts it in time. So people start to go, well, I'll just go a bit earlier, or I'll go a bit later in my day. So there's those two different times, geography and time, that have the impact. But ultimately, you cannot build your way out of traffic congestion, because either it's each additional lane, the increase in cost is that much higher per lane, so the incremental price is going up each time. And of course, there's limited space as well. You've got rights of way, you've got buildings, you've got other competing demands for that right of way. So, I mean, one of the biggest challenges I find in my job is to work out for that right of way, who should have priority on that right of way? Pedestrians, cyclists, buses, taxis, delivery drivers.
Isn't it always the motorist here in Dubai? No,
Well,
I mean, it shouldn't be, but...
Well, I think at the moment there are elements of Dubai where buses are prioritized, but it's not as widespread as it could be. Let's put it like that. So I think there's definitely an element of we can make it better by having more allocation of road space.
That's so interesting. The natural next question is this: what are the smarter ways to make better use of existing road space then?
Yeah. Well, I was just reading actually that Abu Dhabi has introduced something called variable speed limits. So that means while you're driving, the speed limit will be displayed above the lane.
Right. And
let's say the speed limit on that road is 120 kilometers per hour. Now, it may be during congested times that speed limit drops. So automatically it updates on the gantry above, and it will start to say 100.
Right.
And maybe as it gets more congested, it reduces again to 80 kilometers per hour. And the idea is that by enforcing that, so there'll be cameras to check and make sure that everyone's following that speed limit. If you exceed it, it's a ticket. And by slowing the cars down, cars can actually be closer together. And by getting closer together, the throughput of vehicles is actually higher. So you can get a higher volume of vehicles through, even though you've got a lot of traffic trying to do the same use of road space.
I can see the logic of that, and I kind of understand the science, but variable speed limits to me, I don't know. I'm not the most popular things with motorists, I would guess.
Well, this was actually, I mean, I was quite, I was based in the UK, in London, and the M25, which is the circular orbital motorway
The
around
ring,
London,
yeah.
has the very same system. So this was introduced, I don't know, like 1990s. And again, it went from 70 to 60 to 50. And I think originally, yes, maybe there was a bit of reaction against it, but the evidence shows that you can get so much more traffic through.
I guess when you get used to it, I know. I mean, to me, I'm kind of used to this because I go back to the UK every summer, and I go through this because I tend to drive quite a lot. And I'm not used to it because I've lived here for some years, and maybe that's where the mismatch is. To be fair, you've worked internationally. You've mentioned Hong Kong. You're obviously here in the UAE. Your UK, I guess, experienced as well. When you look internationally, what cities stand out? The cities who have maybe successfully tackled congestion. What are they doing differently, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, last year I went with my family to Holland. We had a holiday there for a week, and we based ourselves in Amsterdam, and then we just used public transport everywhere that we went after that. We didn't even think to hire a car or to do anything like that. And it just amazed me how advanced in terms of openness to different forms of transport, to the point where they have cycling lanes pretty much everywhere, but they have even traffic signals for the cyclists because the volume of cyclists is so high.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. I was talking to people there, and they said it doesn't matter if it's cold, it's snowing, it's raining. They've just adapted to it. And I saw young kids, cycling with their parents. I saw pensioners cycling around doing their day-to-day, activities. And I was just so impressed. And alongside that, there was the public transport connectivity. So the smooth, integrated journey. So we booked a trip to go and visit a castle. And to do that, we put it into our app on the phone. And it connected everything from the walk to the station, to getting on the exact train, to getting on the bus, which was waiting for us literally outside the station when we got there, that took us straight to this castle, which was some way out, right in the countryside. And I just kept thinking, that journey that I just made, so difficult to do, but they made it so easy.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge, right? We can look at public transport and go, yes, you can put in a rail network, you can put in bus network. But if you don't make it easy, if you don't make it smooth, it's so much harder to encourage people to go and use it.
I would imagine, and I don't know how far away we are in Dubai from that kind of link up, if you like, but I would think that's something that is being studied. I'm pretty sure the authorities are thinking, we can do that, because you can see the way things are starting to be connected here. This is not, there is a grand plan, isn't there?
Absolutely. So, for example, there are master plans for Dubai as a whole. There's the 2040 Urban Master Plan, which will have transport integrated within that. The Roads and Transport Authority, of course, has their own transport plans for all the different modes as well. So they look at how to connect all the different modes to make them as smooth as possible. I mean, you've got, as you mentioned, I think in that with the last speaker, about the Blue Line. The Blue Line Metro, an additional metro line, looking about how you integrate those into the fabric of Dubai, plus Etihad Rail. Right? So it's the beginning of a much more integrated and led multimodal system for the city.
I mean, alongside the roads, let's look at the rail systems and the metro systems. The investments, they're huge investments. And, from the expansion of the metro into the Blue Line, how do we maximize the value and the usage, I guess, of those rail investments?
I think, first of all, is that first mile, last mile challenge. Okay, so by that I mean you can have the most wonderful station, but if it is very difficult to access by anything other than private car,
sure,
it's a bit limiting in terms of how it's going to be used. So the key here is walking and cycling should be the priority, making the station feel like the front door. It's the opening for your district, and the district should be planned essentially around your transport infrastructure, rather than trying to retrofit it later on, because it's much harder to do it that way around. And we're blessed here in the UAE in terms of being able to do that. You know, these new developments that are coming forward, we have the ability to plan. And that's a lot of my job, is working with developers and government to make sure that transport is integrated into those designs from the beginning. Walking, cycling, bus access, metro access, tram, whatever the mode of transport is, making sure that that is integrated and built from the beginning. Now, for example, we talked about the station, making sure that it's got a shaded walkway, for example, that gets you access to the front door of the station. Making sure that it's got developments built around it, employment, schools, entertainment, leisure, shopping, you know, all of these elements to make sure that they are within a reasonable distance of that station. It's something we call transit-oriented development, TOD. And Hong Kong is very good on this. So one of the first big projects I worked on in Hong Kong was exactly that, a brand new railway station, but with a built-in population of 100,000 people. You know, and coming from the UK at the time, I was just thinking, wow, this is another scale, right? This is before people to own cars, for example. And if we plan like that everything is built in for you, you'd be thinking, well, do I really need a car? You know, if you lived in central London or central New York, I would question, would you really need to have a car? Would you want to have a car? Would it be worth the expense of having a car?
Well, nice to have, but you're right, not really. I was in Hong Kong in the 90s, actually. What year? 95. And I used the metro quite a lot, and it's an incredible system. But what I got from it was that it ran to time so well. It was on the button. It was really impressive. So we're certainly look at the way the metro runs now. We're in that area for sure. In your experience, draw on your many years of experience. Not saying how many. What does good integration between stations and surrounding developments really look like? And that was kind of I'll be honest with you, that's a planned question, but you said something earlier about the station front door.
Yes.
And it dawned on me that where I come from, the train stations, UK train stations they kind of are designed that way. They've been thought through that way. And it's something I'd never thought about before, the way they're integrated into your vicinity, your local kind of environment. So how are we doing that here?
Well, it's interesting. So, for example, we need to make sure that from a good station design would be the forecourt would be multimodal. So we would have, as I mentioned, the walking and the cycling. So by walking, shaded walkway network to the nearest points around. Secondly, cycle networks, segregated cycle tracks. Got to find a way to bring all those systems so they talk to each other, so that we have this, like I was mentioning before, that smooth connecting service. So to you and I, it feels seamless. All the hard work is being done behind the scenes, right, by AI or computer technology, whatever's going on. But it does, to us, it's not we're not doing the hard work to go, well, hang on, if I catch this train and I get in at 10:25, I've got 2 minutes to run across the forecourt to get the 73 bus, for example. It's done for you. It's like, it knows exactly the average walking time. It knows, and your tickets are already pre-booked all the way through from start to finish. So for you, it's as stress-free as possible. It's very hard to do.
I bet.
And I don't think there's many, I mean, I'd like to hear of some examples. I don't know of many true examples of where that is completely functioning.
Have you got some time to stay around with us for a little while? Because I've got so many questions I want to ask you. And I know we've only really got half an hour. Have you got...
Yeah, of course. Happy to spend more time.
No, I really appreciate that.
Questions,
It would be nice for you to stick around for a little bit longer. It's Mirror Business FM. We're talking to Martin Tillman. Martin is, let me just get this absolutely right, a transport and mobility planning advisor. He's with TMP Consult. And what he does is advises governments and developers across the Middle East and internationally on road networks, public transport, sustainable mobility, and future transport systems. Martin, I want to ask you, this is kind of, I suppose, the big question, and there are many different answers to this. There are many excuses that people give for this, I guess, as well. What are the big barriers stopping people from choosing public transport over cars, but particularly here in the UAE?
I think, first of all, is the speed of the journey. So if I think about when people make a choice every day about what mode of transport they're going to use, they think about, first of all, the speed. You know, how quickly can I do it? And how much do I need to think about it? How much do I need to think about this journey?
That's a really good point.
And like driving, okay, it may not be the quickest, right? Because we have the congestion on the roads in certain locations. So we're going, yeah, it may not be the quickest, but do I have to think much about it? Not really. I know the route, I know where I'm going to go, and I know what's going to happen at the end. Whereas if I'm using public transport, maybe I do have to sort of learn a little bit about it. Maybe I'm worried about if it's going to be on time. Maybe I'm going to worry about if I'm going to fit, get on the train or the bus. Maybe it's very congested. So I think there's an element of how do we sort of educate, maybe that's not the right word, but let people experience public transportation so that they feel that it's a viable choice. And part of that, I said, is by design. So good design, best practice design for communities would be that it's a natural experience, that it's just there, and it's actually, you don't need to think about it. And I think that's one of the key ones.
Okay. I'm kind of with you, and I'd never really thought of it in that way before, but I just automatically, it's car key, can't get on the road. And even if I'm in traffic, it's the lazy approach, isn't it? Really, I suppose. I don't have to make a concerted effort. I don't have to really make any effort.
And I think, look, if you were looking to use a metro, I would guess the metro station is not 5 minutes walk from where you are.
Unfortunately, not.
And that's this first mile, last mile challenge.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that they've introduced in Dubai in the last year is something called demand responsive transit. Now, this is quite nice. So, and this is something that is in different parts of the world as well. Now, they're a bit like these taxis on demand, the ones you use in your app and they come and pick you up, but they're buses. So what happens is they will not just pick you up, but they'll pick up maybe 2 or 3 other passengers. They can carry 12, 15 people if they're really doing well.
Right.
And the idea is that it's, of course, not as expensive as the taxis where you have your own private car. So the price comes down to a very affordable level. And what happens is those buses will then sort of route out to pick up different passengers, all going perhaps to a similar destination.
Right.
So it's, and the brains behind it, as I said, is all in the computer technology behind, which works out the optimum route, works out where the passengers are calling from or calling the app for the bus to come and pick them up.
Why did I not know about this?
And I think it's still in early stages.
Right, okay.
Right? So there are 3 private companies operating at the moment, and there is one that is being run by the RTA as well. So I'm working with some of these companies as well, and I just think it's such a good example of sustainable transport. And also, it's one of those ways to solve the first mile, last mile issue, if you like. But how do we get people from their front door to the main public sort of mass transport carrying systems?
It's another, another string to your bow, isn't it, I suppose,
Yes.
for Dubai as well. Can we take a slightly more kind of business policy angle for a moment and look at what maybe the major employers could be doing, what they could offer in terms of, facilitating transportation and, maybe relieving congestion to an extent. Could that be flexible hours? Could that be incentives in transport, organising some kind of bus system, or, location planning? What kinds of things could employers do?
Well, we have something called employer travel plans. And this is where perhaps an employer is typically used to giving maybe a free parking space, for example, as part of the workforce. But then looking at it and going, well, do we need to offer free park? Because there's no such thing, by the way, as a free parking space, right?
It's like lunch, isn't it, parking?
There's no such thing as free parking. And the same way that one of my previous employer would offer, for example, a breakfast, a free breakfast for people that have come in by public transport or who've walked or cycled to come in. Yeah. And it's sort of the natural progression of that. So a travel plan would perhaps look at all the staff and think about where are they traveling from, where are they traveling to, and where are they traveling after work, and then looking to see how they can pool resources, so sharing cars, just making sure that this is as easy as possible for people, rather than having to form it themselves, forming a company system where it's all built in, providing staff with loans for bicycles, or providing free public transport passes instead of a car parking space, for example. There are different ways that employers can work towards that benefits not just the employer, but also benefits Dubai as a whole by sharing out the mode.
I suppose, though, you need buy-in. It's funny, we talk about this a lot here because we look at Mirror Business FM. We're a streaming station, but, want to be an FM station. And one of the reasons behind that, there are a number of reasons, but one of the reasons is because Dubai, the UAE, I guess, Dubai is a car city. And if you're in the car, very often people listen to the radio. So that, it's a simple correlation. But you've got to get buy-in from people when you have a mentality that, it's great to have your own car. And I don't know how you address that with people, because I got to be honest, it'd be quite hard to prise my cold dead hands from the steering wheel in some ways. But that's something you must face as well.
It is, and I think that. But it's interesting because I was asked to comment on a white paper produced by Al Futtaim, one of the developers here in Dubai, and I was commenting that, first of all, it's really interesting that developers are now front and center in the transport debate, because people, when they are making a decision about where to live, it's not purely about what does the community look like. It's also about how accessible is the community. Am I going to take a long time to get in and out of this community?
Yes.
Am I in an area where there is congestion? And that is now becoming higher on the radar for developers. And I find that really positive, that message is now to the point where something is being looked at to say, well, developers also need to play their part in how they think about transport. Now, it's recently introduced is a system here in the UAE this year called Mode Score and Active Score. And this is like a rating system for communities and developments that rates them on how good their transport provision is. And it's a way for people, residents, potential buyers of a community to go, this community is taking this transportation very seriously. They've got a platinum rating. They've got a gold rating. They've got a silver rating. And I am so pleased that this is starting to gain traction here in the UAE. It's only just been launched.
Right.
And developers are now looking to get their developments accredited to say, we've actually taken it as a serious point of view. And I think that is the beginning of how we start to make the change across the whole of the UAE.
It's kind of a uniqueness about Dubai, about the UAE, isn't it? There's almost a sense of, you're part of this nation. You need to make a contribution. We have a shared responsibility here. So don't just whine about the fact that the roads are bad. Do something about it. You can't just build a development and then let the RTA or the authorities work. You have to work together to try and make this as good as we can. And that's driven by vision, I think, at the top as much as anything.
Absolutely. But I think, just the idea of a developer thinking about, well, you know what, we should be having a bus system. We would like a bus system within our development. We would like to have cycle parking. We would like to have cycle facilities, secure locker facilities for our community. This is a change, right? I mean, you look at the older communities, they wouldn't necessarily be thinking like that.
Yeah.
But now, with this Mode Score, Active Score, it's starting to become a much more common theme that's being adopted. So I'm very pleased. I think this is the start, and I think in 5 to 10 years, we'll probably be looking at a very different Dubai in terms of how people think about travelling around the city.
Fingers crossed. Can I, Martin, do you mind if I throw a spanner in the works
Go on.
a moment?
Yes.
Schools. One of the things at the
Yes.
moment is my journey here in the morning. I live out towards the Emirates Road, Sustainable City area. And it's a 15-minute car journey, generally speaking, if the traffic's flowing. There's some roadworks, but, it's growing, and I understand that. But when the schools are in, it's a 40-minute journey to get here in the morning. So schools have a great deal of impact. The school run is a big thing. You mentioned it right at the top of this interview at the start. Could you talk me through the impact as you see it professionally, rather than my frustrated?
Well, I mean, I can offer on both sides, because obviously I take my kids to school as well, so I experience it myself. But there are ways that we can look at that very real impact that you've just talked about. The push of all the vehicles trying to arrive within a certain time. Yeah. First of all is planning. So we try not to, when we're planning new communities, we try not to put more than one school in a certain location. And I think historically there was tendencies to perhaps group schools together or education providers together. Yeah. So the idea is not to do that, because obviously you're increasing that very peak demand in a very small space of area that you're working to. But secondly, the school bus obviously is a good sort of starting point. I think there's a lot more that could be done to encourage more people to use the school buses. I think there is some reluctance in terms of parents understanding how it works. Maybe the cost as well might be quite prohibitive for some. But I think that area needs to be looked at and see if we can encourage more people to use the school buses. And then the third one is quite interesting, again, from a UK point of view, is something that I looked at, is it's a bit like park and ride. So if you imagine a city centre where you'd be encouraged to go and park on the outskirts of the town, and then there'd be a park and ride bus that would take you in. There are elements of that with schools as well. Not so much with buses, actually, but more what we call walking buses.
Okay.
And that means that you drive to a certain location that's not necessarily right outside the front door of your school, but there are completely safe, segregated walking routes from that area to the front door of the school. And you'd have something called a walking bus, where a responsible adult, maybe a teacher, maybe a parent representative, would actually walk with a group of children and bring them into the school. Okay. Now, I think things like that, where you can just start to shift the demand right from the front gate of the school out, that can relieve quite a lot of congestion for the communities that are right next to a school. Yeah. It doesn't solve the issue that you're talking about, which is the one on the roads outside. No. But that's where school buses would actually play a bigger part, perhaps, if there was another system in play, or there's a new measure to try and encourage more people to use it. But these are two sort of nice ideas that are tried and tested in other parts of the world.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about sustainable transport. And by sustainable transport, we're kind of talking about walking and cycling and micro scooters, micro mobility, that kind of thing. Yeah. Very often here's a huge cycling community here, of course. So it's seen as kind of recreational rather than transportation. Do you think that's starting to change at all?
I do. I think they're making good progress. I think Dubai's making great progress in that shift. I think a lot of people would say to me, when I talk about cycling and walking, the first point that people raise to me is, it's just too hot. You know, why are you trying to encourage people to walk in Dubai? Yeah, it's just too much, right? And then when I've done actual surveys and asked people, what is stopping you from cycling? What is stopping you from walking to your destination? They don't mention, the heat is like one of the lower reasons why they would do it. The number one reason given, and I've tested this a few times, I did it like 10 years ago, and I asked like last year as well, what are the reasons? And it's still the number one reason is safety. Okay. Do I feel safe cycling to my destination? Would I feel safe letting my children cycle to school? Would I feel safe with my family walking to the local shops, for example? That is the number one criteria that people judge whether they should walk or cycle.
I mean, I'm not surprised by that, but I think that's something that's been addressed and is being addressed. If you look at, where the cycle routes are, some of the plans for some of the cycle routes, I know a lot is still to come. The heat thing, I'm surprised that's not higher on the list. I lived in Abu Dhabi in the 90s, and I used to mountain bike all the time, and I would mountain bike to the radio station, and I always kind of felt I was the only cyclist on the road, it seemed, at that point. But once I got going, there's a bit of a breeze going, it was kind of okay.
Yes.
But maybe that's just, we're back to Mad Dogs and Englishmen again, I'm not sure.
Well, you'll be interested to know what the second and third reason was, why people don't cycle. So the second one was about whether they had facilities at their destination. So what, can you park your bicycle? Is there a secure place to lock your bicycle? Is there like a shower facility? Is there somewhere for you to get changed at your destination? And if there isn't, well, that's going to make that choice much more difficult.
Yeah.
And the third one, and it's a strange one to me, but it was like, do you have a bicycle, right? And surprisingly, not that many people, as you think, might have a bicycle.
Yeah, okay.
And I guess linked to that was a lot of people don't know how to ride bicycles. It's not such a cultural exercise that people have gone through.
That's the point.
And I thought, well, of course, if you don't have a bicycle, you're not going to be cycling. If you don't know how to ride a bike, you're not probably going to go out and buy a bicycle.
That's the point.
So there's a whole shift in terms of how we can make that better. And it's a very straightforward exercise, right? It's about education. It's about providing maybe discounts for people to buy bicycles, to learn and things like that. There are ways that we can encourage people to do that. And if we can get those parts ready, the last point, which is the heat, we can address. There's physical measures that we can put in through shading and misting structures. I mean, like you, I lived in Abu Dhabi previously as well. And I used to love cycling on the Corniche, and there was like little misting stations and everything that you could enjoy. It was just so pleasant to do that.
Okay. So ultimately, it's about offering people choice, isn't it? The education aspects aside, making sure the cycle routes are there, making sure that the options are there. You're incentivized to buy a bicycle, for example. It's incentivized maybe to learn to ride a bicycle if you've not had that opportunity. Yes. So, but we kind of default to the car. So it's a habit that we have to break.
It is, but I do feel like if the facilities are there, like if you're developing if you're a big developer and you're building a new community, I expect now the incentive is to build those facilities into your development. The next question is from a Dubai point of view, from an RTA or Dubai municipality point of view, to provide that connection, that safe, secure, segregated network from that community to destinations. And not just to one destination, right? It has to be a spider's web, a network of interconnected, so that it's not just to one. You've got an options of where you're traveling to. Yeah. And once we get to that point, then I think we've got a different discussion about how people make their choices.
It's just hard getting to that point. It's so involved, so technical. But ultimately, for you and me, it has to be that kind of what the KISS principle is. It's the keep it simple, stupid principle, isn't it? Really, for us, for the likes of us.
But I would argue that it's probably cheaper, dare I say, easier to build a cycle network and a pedestrian network than it is to build another highway or another
major highway.
And so I think that's sort of the balance and it is a balance. I'm not saying we've got to go from one extreme to the other. It's about a layered system, a multimodal system that gives people as many choices and options as we can provide.
Exactly right. Let's look at some of the glitzy headline stuff, the real Dubai stuff. We hear a lot about the future of transportation, from autonomous vehicles. I know the regulations are being examined very closely at the moment. That's in serious legal phase, if you like. EVTOL, air taxis, Hyperloop. I don't know if Hyperloop is a thing or not. I'm never really convinced by that. But these are innovations, in theory, solving problems that we believe we have. But, in the case of air taxis, they're coming.
Yeah, they are. They are. And again, absolutely fascinating, the sort of ideas behind it. For me, eVTOLs are very good for point-to-point. And really, if I'm being frank, brutal, honest, it's going to be high cost. It's going to be, it's not going to be a mass transportation system in the near
It's a niche
future.
market, isn't it?
I believe so.
Yeah.
And so is it going to move the needle for transportation in the UAE or beyond, or anywhere in the world for that matter? I'd probably say for now, no. Is it interesting? Is it futuristic? Yes, it is. You know, I can't think of a science fiction film where we haven't sort of looked at the flying cars and gone, wow, doesn't that look amazing? And I'd love to try it. So yes, for sure. And I'd say the same for a lot of the other schemes as well. What is the problem that they are trying to solve that we don't have already?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So Hyperloop is in a way, it's a very fast train system, if you like. It carries people along a single line. It has a station at one end and a station at the other end and stops on the way. So it's like a train, really. But it's very high speed, so it can do extremely long distances. And of course, we have planes that do long distances as well. So I think it's a question of, is it solving something that we don't have an answer for already? And why? What is it doing differently to the existing modes? If there is an additional benefit to it, then I'm all for it. If it's just replicating for the sake of replicating, I'm not so sure. So
Is Hyperloop a thing, really? Is it?
it's still being studied as far as I understand. I certainly had some discussions with the Hyperloop companies that were looking to develop here in the UAE.
Right.
I haven't heard the latest, to be honest, on what the current status is of Hyperloop here. So I don't know. I think the focus has maybe shifted to Etihad Rail and the metro systems. And for me, that's tried and tested. I mean, we're going to have trains running next year, passenger trains running, right? From
There's something
Abu Dhabi to Dubai to Sharjah to Fujairah. I mean, traveling to Fujairah in 1 hour from Dubai, honestly, that feels to me like a big win, right?
There's something about a train journey, the romance of it, and I don't know if that's rose-tinted spectacles or it's having lived in London and used the trains and realised that as long as there are no leaves on the line, it is an effective mode of transportation. But there's something about it. It's a great way to travel.
And the one that the futuristic modes that I think really are going to move the needle. These are the ones that I really think are going to make the difference. Are autonomous vehicles, and I think we've got a whole new world coming to us, which will solve some problems and create new problems.
Right.
So if I think about autonomous cars or autonomous taxis, we are going to have a reduction, for example, in the amount of parking that we need. So an autonomous vehicle will drop you off at your destination. So say I was coming by autonomous car to the studio, the car would drop me off, but it wouldn't need to park. It would just go off and it would go maybe and park somewhere out in the desert, or maybe it would circle around and pick someone else up and do something else. So we're shifting from we're getting one solution, which is less parking needed, but we're going to another problem, which is that vehicle's now circling around, either trying to find someone else or it's going out to go and park somewhere else to come back later to pick people up. And then the other part of that's going to be the next challenge is the use of curbside. Curbside is going to become the next battle in transportation because we are going to have many more vehicles, not just taxis and autonomous cars, but we're going to have autonomous buses. That's the next stage. And they're all going to be vying for the same curb space outside the buildings and the development.
And there is limited curb space, and you can't really build an infrastructure of autonomous drop-off locations.
And you can you just imagine, so like, let's say an office, and let's say at 5 o'clock the office finishes, and people are all leaving.
Oh, that's a...
Right, so then you've got that limited curb space, but a lot of cars, taxis trying to come and use that space to pick up. So I believe this is going to be the next challenge. And I think there are companies already looking at how we might rationalize curb space. For sure, this is something that will become an issue in the next 5 years, I would expect, with the rise of autonomous vehicles.
Okay, we're going to have to learn how to queue, Martin. And
I
we don't
honestly,
like queuing, do we?
I think we like to take our time, right? So maybe we order our car, and then we meet John, and we say, "Oh, hi, John, how you doing?" And we're waiting, and that car's using up valuable space outside where someone else is actually waiting for their vehicle.
It's a good point. Yeah. The taxi guys that drive you home after a night out at the weekend, and it's 10:30, and it's invariably 11:30. I feel for those guys. You see, the time span that you mentioned there was 5 years. What's realistic, do you think? Because autonomous cars are coming. There's no doubt about that.
Yes.
It's just when. What's realistic in the next 5 years versus what might be perhaps a longer-term aspiration, do you think?
To be honest, it's the speed at which the UAE is moving is surprising me. So about a month ago, I was on Yas Island, and I saw the WeMove bus, which is this autonomous bus, minibus. And I nearly sort of just screamed while I was driving because my family was in the car, and I was like, wow! I was just so excited because I'd seen a autonomous bus driving around Yas Island, and there was no driver. You know, sometimes you see somebody there who's just monitoring the wheel. There was no driver. My kids were just going, "What? What's so exciting?"
Do you know what? I nearly said there, Martin Tillman, you need to get out more. And then I thought, if I was you, I'd have been exactly the same.
Yeah,
as
because
excited,
it's the first time I've seen a bus with no driver.
Yeah.
And for me, that was the next big step in terms of how we progress public transport in the UAE. So when you say, oh, it's coming, it's here, right? So it's here in certain locations. Dubai is also, I believe there's one being started or trialed at Festival City in this area in Dubai. So is it here? Yes. It's in trial phase, and they're going to build from this. The question is, how long does it take to scale up from where we are now to becoming more visible, more usable? I think now maybe it's still seen as a bit of a niche, maybe a novelty, for me certainly. But after maybe a year's time, maybe it's become more common. Maybe people are just getting more used to, getting a taxi and it doesn't have a driver.
Yeah. Do you know, I haven't used all the questions that I wanted to use today. We've got 2 minutes left, but I do need to ask you this. In your view, final question, what will be the biggest challenge for transport innovation over the next decade? Will it could be a mix of all three, I don't know, but tech, regulation, or good old human behavior?
Yeah, I think human behavior we can sort of influence. We can influence, but I do believe this needs to come from the top. I do believe we do need to set the policy, and Dubai is doing a fantastic job in terms of putting in the public transport facilities here and continuing, not just sitting back and letting that rest, to keep that development going. I believe education is very important. I'm one of the founding members of the Chartered Institute of Highways and Transportation, and I'm the former chair of that organization. And we do seminars and presentations about transportation for those in the industry, but also those who are just interested in learning about transportation. And I think it's very important that organizations such as CIHT are involved in spreading the word so that people understand how important transport is and what a difference it can make to our lives for the better, if it's planned well. Okay. And if it's not planned well, you know about it, right? So that's when all the complaints come. Good transport should almost be, you don't even notice, right? Because it's so smooth, it's so easy. And like the point I made earlier, you just don't need to think about it.
And we shouldn't be talking about it either, really, in lots of ways.
That's
works,
a good point, yeah.
We shouldn't need to be saying anything. Thankfully, we've had plenty to say this morning. I've really enjoyed talking to you. I mean that. Martin Tillman advises governments, developers across the Middle East, internationally, on road networks, public transport, sustainable mobility, and future transport systems. He is a transport and mobility planning advisor from from TMP Consult. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Appreciate it, Martin. Don't forget, leave us a like, hit subscribe wherever you're joining us from. Get in touch, let us know what you think. Remember, everything we do is available to watch again or listen again as well, wherever you get your podcast from. This is Mirror Business FM.
Mirror Business FM, where business comes to talk. Mira Business FM, where business comes to talk.
This is Mira Business FM. It's the morning drive with me, Tim Elliott. Good morning to you. It's finance next, and it's specifically Islamic finance. And once again, back to basics, the very basics, almost an Islamic finance 101, if that's the way you'd like to hear it described. Dr. Adnan Aziz is, the Chief Program Officer of the Global Islamic Finance for Climate, Nature and Development. He's a professor, he lectures, he's often an invited speaker as well, and is back here in the studio. It's good to see you again. I appreciate you coming back to join us. Last week, Dr. Adnan, we really only covered the very basics, and I didn't really get to most of the questions I wanted to ask you. That's the constraints of time, of course. We looked at the size of the industry. Just as a reminder, assets valued over $3.38 trillion to $5 trillion in 2024. Depends on the research that you look at, of course. Projections are for growth to reach something like $7.5 trillion in the next 2 years or so, 2 to 3 years. We discussed the history. It's a relatively young industry, as we talked, as well as briefly we looked at the way some Islamic finance products are structured. There's a lot more to talk about, so hence part two. So at its core, what Islamic finance means is activities that are Sharia-compliant, so according to Islamic law. And I wanted to start there today to ask you, who's permitted to declare that a financial product is Sharia-compliant?
Thank you very much, Tim, once again, for inviting me over.
You're welcome.
Time is never on our side, I know that.
That's true.
And topics such as these, they deserve as much of a deliberation as required. Now, to your question about who is permitted to declare whether something is compliant with Sharia, is typical of, think of any discipline. So if you wanted to seek a legal opinion, it won't be me. You will have to find a qualified lawyer who has been trained, has experience of issuing legal opinions, has cases on hand, understands. So this is how they would do, an accountant for that matter. Similarly, when it comes to Sharia domain, there are qualified Sharia scholars trained in the discipline of understanding a situation, analyzing it within the context, as well as in the and putting it to the prism of the Islamic principles, litmus test there, and seeing whether they can be considered permissible or not. If I were to refer to their default starting point, the default starting point for a Sharia scholar is, and this is also a Islamic legal maxim, everything is permissible unless explicitly prohibited.
Okay.
So the default starting point looking at any new situation would be, this should be okay. And then they would start looking into it. And if they identify anything which is not necessarily okay, they will see whether that can be fixed, rectified, and made it okay. So this is how typically how it works. So these are the Sharia scholars, without getting into too much of a detail, but they are qualified scholars trained in Islamic jurisprudence, particularly specialized in Islamic financial transactions. So we refer to it in Arabic fiqh al-mu'amalat, which is the jurisprudence of I would say engagements, arrangements, transactions, or whatever. So there is a specific discipline. So while you will find many Sharia scholars out there, qualified, scores and scores of them, is a handful of the ones who have further specialized in Islamic financial transactions, and these are the ones who would typically issue that.
Okay.
Finally, in the context of UAE, there is an authority called High Sharia Authority, which comprises of similarly qualified scholars sitting on it. It sits as part of the board. It's a part of the central bank, UAE central bank structure. So they have the ultimate authority in UAE to confirm whether something is permissible or not. But then there are similar scholarly boards sitting on every Islamic bank or financial institution in the country, which is also true elsewhere, who would also make sure that whether, and they would be the ones issuing a religious opinion, documented opinion, telling whether it is compliant or not.
Okay, so let's look at, you mentioned the word principles there, some of the core principles. Most people, I guess, would be aware, and listening to this, whether Muslim or not listening to this, are aware that some industries, some practices would be haram or forbidden. Alcohol products, pork products, gambling, etc. You know, that's kind of well understood. It's worth reminding, I think, that riba is a core principle, the prohibition of interest, as I understand it. How does Islamic finance operate without charging interest? And once again, if you don't mind outlining the difference between riba and, you know, a permissible profit, or I guess that's like a markup in some ways. Could you outline that for me?
Tim, this is actually, I'll try and keep it simple. And practical.
You need to, for me.
Yeah. Well, even for me, I would like to keep it that way, depending on the context and the circle we are talking in it. And at this point in time, we are talking to the audience, common audience, so we need to be relevant to them too.
Sure.
So I will start with that riba is the Arabic word, as we call it, and it is clearly prohibited.
Yes.
It's prohibition. Now, whatever word we use to represent that is a translation.
Okay.
In English, we call it interest. In other languages, we call it something different. So to keep it simple, now riba can take different forms, and it can be in different situations. The majority of the scholarly opinion, contemporary scholars' opinion, is that the banking interest, which we see, is also a form of prohibited riba.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
There could be others too. So I just want to make sure that our listeners and those who are viewing it do not think that riba is only specific to banking transactions. It could be anywhere as well, elsewhere as well.
Yeah.
Now, this one particularly when it comes to the, and there is, by the way, a minority opinion as well, which thinks that while riba is prohibited, the banking interest is not necessarily the same. But that's the minority opinion, so we'll go by the majority, which is what we see in the country here as well. So without getting into that much of a detail, but just to acknowledge that there is a minority opinion as well,
yes,
which is different. Now, this prohibited riba is the way to look at it within the context of that. And your question was, how do we then, compare it with Islamic banks not getting into riba and still making money?
Yeah.
So how do they do that? Now, for that, we need to go back to the legal architect of the financial transactions. In a banking system, typically it is either lending the money or borrowing the money. So when you deposit money to a bank, you lend it to them.
Yeah.
And it is, and the contract you sign is a loan contract. And the other side, when you want money, the bank would lend the money to you, you become a borrower. Again, the contract you sign is a loan contract. So what is being exchanged, in any contract, there are two counter values to an exchange. So I give something in exchange of something to you. This is how a contract works between two parties.
Sure.
So in this case, the subject matter of exchange is money. You give money, you take money. And the two sides of the equation are unequal in quantity and usually different in time.
Yeah.
So one is spot, other is deferred.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, exchanging anything as an asset is fine in Sharia. And money can be treated as an asset as well, for that matter. It is also fine to defer one side of the equation, which is what happens in conventional banking. What is not fine from Sharia principle, and which is where the riba is defined, is that when you, by the majority of the scholars I refer to, they would define it that if money is exchanged for money, or any same type of assets, it could be rice for rice. It could be sugar for sugar. Any asset which is exchanged for itself, it cannot be exchanged in unequal quantities.
Okay. Right. I understand.
Now, this unequalness could be higher or less.
Yeah.
We normally look at riba or interest as higher. It could be less as well.
Sure.
So technically, that is riba. That is what is riba. So unequalness of the same asset being transacted, exchanged in a transaction, is something which is prohibited. Now, that is and that is the fundamental model on which banks operate. They exchange money for money in the form of a loan contract, and there is unequalness in it. And that is on a deferred, and they justify it on the basis of deferment and whatever, which is okay. I mean, time value of money in some ways they would like to bring into the question. The point I would like to make here is that Islamic banks and financial institutions, their architecture is such that they avoid this technical basis on which riba any unequalness is considered riba. So what they do is while it is not permissible to exchange same type of assets in unequal quantities, it is absolutely fine to exchange any different type of assets in any quantity we want. So essentially what it means is, if you remember last time we talked about car finance as an example.
Yeah.
So Islamic bank would say, we'll buy the car. So they buy the car on spot. What is being exchanged? Money for a non-money asset, which is car. So they buy it for cash, and then they become the owner and sell it. So they now sell a non-money asset for a money against it, which is a different. So now we are exchanging different assets with each other, hence why we can determine whatever price we want. So since we are not exchanging money for money directly, so it allows us to do it that way. And this is how banks manage to make money, Islamic banks. But as I said earlier, if you remember, that when it comes to how much of the money to make, since the market is predominantly still conventional, so they would want to price their products, i.e. the profit margin, which is the same.
Yeah.
Now, why don't we call it riba, or why don't we call it interest? Is because the basis has changed now. The legal basis has changed from being a loan to a trade.
Okay.
Right? So in this example, I, as a bank, I bought it and I sold it. And hence why, if I buy it for X price and sell it for X plus Y, by any accounting standards, I can simply not call it riba or interest, because when I book it in according to international financial standards of reporting as well, I will book it as profit. That's my profit. Hence why we call it profit. It's not that we just change the label of it, because the basis of it we have changed as well. I hope that makes sense.
No, it does make sense. I mean, it's as though the idea comes from this sense that if you do something that's unfair, that's frowned upon. There is an inherent sense, I think, of that transactionally it has to be fair for both sides. There's a mutual respect issue here, and I wonder if that's where much of this is derived from. And there's another point I think I'd like to make, and it relates directly to this. Excessive risk, also something prevalent in banking circles, certainly conventional banking circles. People try to mitigate risk, but there is risk in financial transactions. Excessive risk or uncertainty is also something that is not permitted in Islamic finance, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah.
But no, this is the other principle in addition to riba.
Yes.
The prohibition of riba. So now you're referring to prohibition of excessive risk.
Yeah.
Now, what it also means by implication, that risk is permitted. It's the excessive nature of it which is not permitted.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And the reward...
So again, you start from that point. It's okay.
It's okay to have risk.
Obviously, it's not okay.
Yes.
You get to that point.
Yeah. I'll give you an example once a friend gave, and I like that. When you go to a grocery shop, you buy, say, fruits, you buy oranges, you buy mangoes, whatever. The risk you take is that some of these oranges might not be good to eat, but you still buy it as a part of the package. And that is the risk you take. So if a risk is bundled in a transaction, that risk is okay, because that's a natural part of the transaction.
Okay.
The moment you start trading in the risk itself on purpose, that is where it becomes problematic. So, so for example, you start trading in futures and forwards. You're taking a risk position, you're taking a view on it, and you're trading that risk, or options for that matter. Conventional, I mean, more complex discussions in terms of derivative markets. So that's where the problem is. Now, if there is no risk at all, that's also not permissible, because you cannot justify reward without taking a risk.
Okay, yeah.
So there has to be a degree of risk in it as well, in every transaction. That is the basis of you making money out of it. In a trade, so if I go back to the simple example we've been talking about, the bank buys the car. Now the risk is, what if you as a customer refuse to buy it from the bank? And then the bank has a now there are ways we mitigate that too. But I'm saying that because we identify a risk, then we want to do something to manage it, mitigate it as well. Similarly, the risk of ownership. What if I buy the car today as a bank and sell it to you tomorrow? The price can change over time. Now, I might have bought it maybe tomorrow, the price is actually less. I bought it more expensive today. Or if you don't buy it, I have to sell it back in the market, and I might lose some money. So there's always a degree of risk involved in it. Now, we manage it as bankers. We are also smart people. So we know those risks, and hence we manage them. But that's different ball game. That, okay, if you know the risk, you want to manage it. Excessive risk could be an example of, let me pick an example from insurance industry. So in a conventional insurance arrangement, we take an excessive risky position. I buy a policy by paying a premium. First of all, I'm paying money today to get money in exchange in future if an event happens. That is unequal trade of money, which is riba already. That's why conventional insurance is not okay. The other element is the risk element, which is what is relevant to this discussion. The risk I'm taking is, I'm protecting my risk of an event of something happening in future. I'm protecting that, right? And for that, I'm taking an excessively risky position. If the event doesn't happen, I will lose this money. Okay? So I've kind of gambled here, which is an extreme example of risk, excessive risk. But the risk can also be, excessive risk can also be in the contracts themselves. When we assign these trading agreements, if we keep the prices ambiguous, if we do not specify the conditions clearly, any contractual arrangement which can lead to a potential dispute later is also considered excessive risk. That's also prohibited. So there are various ways in which we look at. But yes, to answer your question, if you allow me to give you a classical example from jurisprudence.
I'd like to hear it, yeah.
It used to be very common, and it does happen, by the way, even today.
Okay.
Now, I can't say you don't quote me because I'm on the air in public. But it is true, even today it happens.
Right.
You know, people used to do what we call bay al-habla al-habla. So, selling the baby in the womb of the camel or horse. Now, basically saying, okay, I'm selling this horse to you or camel to you. It's pregnant. So I'm pricing in the baby in it as well.
Okay.
So do we know the gender of it? And now maybe today we can, but previously we couldn't. So we wouldn't know the gender. But can we guarantee whether this will be a stillbirth or a baby would be alive? Can we guarantee it would be not disabled, healthy and all? So we're taking, these are excessive risks. So those are classical examples to make us understand that in transactions, we should not be allowing excessive uncertainty or risk.
Okay.
I hope that explains.
No, that does explain it. We're talking to Dr. Adnan Aziz. He's Chief Program Officer of the Global Islamic Finance for Climate, Nature and Development. He's a professor, and we're talking Islamic finance today here on Mirror Business FM. Don't forget, you can subscribe to our social channels. Get in touch, let us know what you think, and find us wherever you get your podcasts from. This is Mirror Business FM. More with Dr. Adnan Aziz. Let me ask you a little bit about, let me make a point to you and see if I've got this right. We've talked about excessive risk. We've talked about why riba or prohibition of interest is not permissible. The focus, it seems, is all about having something, an asset that is backed. It's about ethics. It's about profit and loss sharing, really, isn't it? And I think sharing is the key word there. Real tangible products, real trade, real services. So, you could make a very strong argument that what we're talking about is a very transparent way of working with people.
My short answer, I would like to say yes.
Okay.
And that's the intent.
Right.
Do we always manage to achieve that in practice? I would like to be fair.
Right.
Fair in my response to you.
Okay.
Depending on the jurisdiction we operate in, depending on how diligent and how detailed the regulator in the country is, yes, we should be able to achieve it. But this is human psyche and this is business psyche. Whether we like it or not, if it serves our vested interests, at times we try and be unfair too. So there has to be a regulatory stick at times to make that happen as well. So yes, I would say that's the intent. Do we always achieve it? It varies from one jurisdiction to another. I would say from the experience of UAE over the period of time has been encouraging towards that direction. It hasn't necessarily been the case in every single jurisdiction where we see active presence of Islamic banking and finance practice.
I mean, it is. We mentioned at the start of this interview. It's a young industry. It's a developing industry. We're going to see. I outlined some of the figures there. The growth expected is huge, just in the next 2 to 3 years. But the ideas, the ethos behind this is that fairness is at the heart of it. There's an idea, I think, of social benefit. But the other point, and I think we made this point last time, but I think it's important to reiterate this, is Islamic banking or Islamic finance or, Islamic structured products, whatever. It's not that, it's for Muslims. I mean, it is for Muslims, but it's open to everybody.
It is for everybody.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's worth making that point, because I think a lot of people look at this, and I think I said to you last time, I'll be honest with you, I took a car loan out once, and I went to the bank that I used because it was round the corner. It was convenient. Happened to be an Islamic bank, and it worked well for me.
Good to know that. And you're absolutely right. Banks, Islamic banks, if they were to limit themselves, the target market being just Muslims, they will not be doing justice with themselves.
Sure.
In the end, it's a business for them, and they should be doing business with everyone. So it does not serve the business acumen will tell them, no, create a business, even if it is based on certain principles which are not necessarily a common faith for others. They may be faith-driven, but the business case has to be for everyone. And that is what Islamic banks do as well.
Yeah.
So that is the case here. Often, however, if Islamic banks fail to attract enough of a non-Muslim clientele, is not because they would not want to do business with them. It is because they haven't necessarily marketed themselves right. I would say that could be the reason. So yes, it is for everyone, and everyone should be able to benefit from it. The ethical aspect of it, or the purpose behind the legality I was referring to earlier, which is a social benefit, is not as obvious when things are business as usual in current environment. It is usually when things go wrong when we start seeing the benefit. And I gave you those real life examples.
Yeah.
Hence why Islamic bankers need to make more of an effort to make sure that they are able to also sell what could potentially happen in the event of things going wrong. Not just, so most of the time we focus, the typical sales pitch of our sales colleagues. Oh, you know what is car loan? It's exactly the similar. You don't have to worry about it being Islamic. You will not have any problem with it if it is Islamic. No. Because this is a person, presumably, they're talking to who is not necessarily driven by faith here.
Yeah.
So you also want to tell something which is uniquely there. And they don't talk about it. That is the missing piece in terms of awareness. I think forums such as this are can potentially fill in that gap in the knowledge as well. And maybe we're pitching for the banks without getting paid for it. But that's the right thing to do, right? So I'm here to represent common person like myself on the street. So we really need to understand that.
Well, we do, and it's interesting to understand the differences, the way things are structured. And actually, that's what I would like to talk to you about. Some of the key, I suppose, mechanisms or contracts. I'll kind of try to compare them in a way, but if you could put me on the right path, what am I getting right here? But I look at some of the way things are structured, some of the way products are offered, and the first thing that comes to mind, and I've heard this word many times, murabaha, which is a familiar structure, I think, to many, but also there'll be a lot of people that have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about. I question whether I do sometimes as well. But murabaha is kind of, I suppose the equivalent is cost plus financing, isn't it? Is that reasonable?
You're very close.
Close enough for this.
Yes.
But, what
You know what? In our interaction so far, last sitting and this one as well.
Yeah.
Did you hear this word from me? Did I use murabha as a term? I don't think I did.
No, you didn't actually. No,
And
not at all.
on purpose.
Right.
Because.
Why is that?
That's because it's just a terminology.
Right.
It is not to sell the Arabic term to make a case for it being Islamic.
Okay.
And I'm not in favor of that as an approach from marketing perspective.
Right.
Murabha is a label in Arabic for a certain type of a trade.
Okay.
And that's what I was referring to all the time.
What kind of a trade is murabba? What's a better equivalency?
So, as you said, cost plus, although you were technically right to say that it is cost plus finance, because in the end we use it to finance.
Yes.
But if I were to literally translate it, then it would be cost plus trade.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Okay?
Yeah. Strictly speaking.
Yeah. So we are trading.
Yeah.
Buying something at a given cost and trading it for a plus element in it.
Right. Okay. So that would be
selling it. So
the
it's a
bank
trade. Yeah.
buying the car, selling me the car, and there would be a profit.
Plus element, which is the profit, declared and known, mutually agreed.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a simple kind of equivalent loan, conventional loan product. Isn't it?
The economic effect of it is similar to a conventional car loan.
Right.
But the legality of it is not same.
Okay.
So the conventional car loan, so if I were to put some numbers, the car is worth 100,000 dirhams in the market, to keep it simple. You don't have that cash with you now. You go to the bank. Bank would lend 100,000 to you and say, okay, you return 110,000 to me, 10,000 being my interest, over 3 years.
Yep.
And in Islamic arrangement, bank says, I will buy it for 100,000. In first case, you will take the 100,000, go and buy for yourself. In second case, bank would buy for itself first for 100,000 and sell it to you for 110,000. Okay, and that is where this is where the 10,000 becomes a profit for them. That's how it operates. So it's a trading arrangement because of the legality of it. But the economic substance is same.
Mm.
And that is what we tend to sell a lot. Oh, it's the same thing. We're not pricing ourselves differently. We are the same. And that is what also becomes at times, the reason for the criticism. Okay, what is different are you doing? You're just circumventing. You're holding the ear from this end, not from here. Okay? And that is part of the criticism.
Familiar objections, I think, from some quarters.
And that is also why I gave you the real life example.
Yeah.
It is because of the holding of the ear from this side, that longer journey, that we had that situation in which the customer was protected.
Okay.
And that is what we don't sell. Because that doesn't happen too often, and we don't want it to happen too often.
Yeah.
Because the business as usual should be normality. In order to should prevail. But when things go wrong, we want to be able to protect ourselves too. That's where the conventional banking system doesn't necessarily offer it the same way.
Okay. Well, can I ask you for some, if you can, outline some definitions then, without me offering definitions, because I think very often with Islamic products, you see these words referred to. It's structured in this way, and I'm thinking, well, I don't know. I just want to see the figures at the end of the day. But I think it's important to understand them. Murabaha, one thing. Ijara is another.
Yes, Ijara is another commonly used product.
Very common.
In the UAE, but also elsewhere.
Yeah.
In the UAE, we use it a lot, and I'm keeping it more retail-centric example, consumer-based. I mean, the businesses use as well, but I'll keep it to retail.
Yeah.
It's typically for home finance in this country. So the Islamic mortgage works on the basis of Ijara. Ijara actually is a term, Arabic term, translated as lease. Okay. Now, lease is of two types, operating lease and finance lease. This is if I were to draw some parallels, this is more like a finance lease. In the UK, you and I would go to the market and we'll have an option for a car, for example, on a hire purchase basis. Mm-hmm. So I would hire the car, lease it for 2-3 years. At the end of the 3 years, when I have paid all the installments or all the rentals, then I become owner as well.
Yeah.
Remember? So think of it similar to that. However, the difference here is the bank buys the property, becomes the owner, like the showroom would become owner of the car, and then lease it to you. So the bank would lease it to you as a customer who wants home finance. Now, what they do is they also want you to make periodic payments of rent to them. And the way the bank gets its capital back and its profit on that is in the form of rental. So think of it, two components of the rental, although you just see one figure. In the back end, they book it as fixed rental element and variable rental element. The fixed rental element is to get your capital back. So that is one part of it. And the variable element is where they want to make the profit. Now, typically the rent is agreed for future period, and you pay for that. Every time, so there are certain frequencies, typically, unless you have fixed it for a certain time period, which is also a possibility. Normally, they refer to the benchmark of RERA, for example, in Dubai. So they will publish the numbers, and that is the benchmark or index. So with that, they will keep on changing the variable part. And that is how the rental will work for them. At the end of the period, what will happen? Say it was a 10 years product, 10 years mortgage. At the end of 10 years, you would have paid all the rentals they were supposed to be paid. Essentially, from bank's perspective, they have received all the money they had used to purchase the asset, and they have received the profit they wanted to make as well. At that point in time, however, the ownership is still of the bank, not yours.
Yes.
They need to transfer that ownership to you. So this is a specific terminology again to make sure I confuse you enough. It's ijara muntaha bit tamlik as an Arabic terminology, which I would not want to use normally. That means an ijara and lease which ends with transfer of ownership.
Okay.
So it's not an automatic transfer because lease is a separate agreement in Sharia, and the trade of buying and selling of an asset is a separate thing. So at the end of this period, you will enter into another nominal. You will pay 100 dirham nominal price, which is off market, and that is permitted within the legal frameworks of the country for Islamic banks and financial institutions, not otherwise. That no, they bought it once on the market anyway. Now they're just doing it to transfer the ownership to you. So on a nominal price, they will sell it to you and you will become the owner. Now there are a number of things in between which can happen. And these are details. So you may want to have an early maturity. You may want to early terminate it. Or you may default as well. So there are situations which we have to handle in between, which perhaps for some other time. But I wanted to tell you that while I simply presented a simplified version of it, there are situations in between which are also catered for and agreed within the agreement already as customer and bank. Then in situations such as that, this is how we will deal with it. Okay, but I think I'll stop there from explaining what ijara is.
No, I think that's a really important point to make as well, because that's the point. I always think that's the point of difference with Islamic finance, is that all of these things are agreed up front. In conventional finance, interest rates can fluctuate wildly in some cases, and that's something that you accept but not agree up front. It's a very different way of approaching that transaction to somebody looking from outside in.
Yes. Yes and no. Now, I would like to again say that this is a value add amongst the value add of Islamic transactions. But in the interest of fairness, when you go to the fine print of a conventional offering as well, they're also very transparent on it.
In the main, maybe.
No, they are.
But you can't predict interest rates.
Correct, but you can't predict what is going to be the RERA rate either.
Fair point, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is what we use. So, and that also is used by conventional banks in mortgages. Mm-hmm. So the movement is what is not what allows us to feel comfortable is that we are agreeing to a benchmark which is known.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
That allows us to remove the uncertainty part. So what we need to ensure is that there is no basis for a dispute to occur later. Since we agreed to it, whatever and wherever it goes, then it is fine. And because that's where the market is. So I would like to say it is true that transactions are transparent, and perhaps to your experience and where you're coming from is because Islamic financial transactions are structured differently. These details come out perhaps more obviously than conventional arrangements. They're there too.
Do you know, that's probably fair.
Yes.
Yeah, that's probably
maybe
fair.
That's the reason.
Yeah, I think that's maybe how I view the way that these products are structured. I wanted to ask you for a couple more definitions, if you don't mind, because I think it's important to understand these. Now, I look at this next one as being, you're probably going to say not almost, but not quite again, and I'm hopeful that you do. Musharaka, to me, is really a joint venture. Is that a reasonable way to describe
Correct.
Musharaka?
Musharaka is a kind of partnership.
Got it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right on that. Now, having said that, use of Musharaka is not this. In UAE, for example, we don't use Musharaka as much. Okay. We use another form of partnership more often, which is Mudaraba. Maybe you have heard of that too.
Okay, which is, well, I have heard of that, yes. And I see that as, I looked the definition for that up actually, and it came up with profit sharing.
Correct. So in response to your question for Musharaka, allow me to also comment on Mudaraba and compare the two.
Sure.
And talk a little more about Mudaraba because we use that in this country particularly.
Fair.
Musharka is you and I, Tim, if we put some money together to do some business, whatever we want to agree on,
Okay.
that is what becomes a joint venture. We become joint owners of the assets. We build out of it.
I think we'd run a great coffee shop together. How
Yeah,
about that?
yeah,
Let's,
well,
let's have a coffee shop
yeah,
as
yeah.
our business.
Yeah. Okay, a coffee shop.
I'll do the beans. You do the all the sensible.
All right,
the
okay.
good
But
stuff.
in any case, for the entire business, we own together. So we put the capital of all sorts, including for the raw material and whatever else, okay?
All right then.
Now, what we can agree is, we can say, okay, Tim, you and Adnan, we are joint owners. We can either agree to have a proportionate share in the profit, or we could also agree to have a different profit sharing ratio between us.
Right.
Okay, doesn't necessarily mean that it is because we have, let's say it's equal contribution, but it's not necessarily because I'm managing and you're not. But this could be one reason.
Okay.
Okay, we could also appoint someone else to manage. And you could also appoint, or we together could appoint me as an employee and pay my salary out of it, in which case, together we are paying my salary first before we make a call on the profit.
Okay.
But what important is that when it comes to sharing of the profit in a musharka arrangement where both parties or multiple parties, they have all contributed a capital in cash or in kind, they will have an agreed ratio of a profit they will have a claim on, if there happens to be a profit. This ratio can be different than their capital contribution. But when it comes to loss, the loss has to be always in proportion to our capital contribution. We cannot agree to sharing a loss differently.
Okay.
That's how musharka is defined.
Right.
But mudarba, on the other hand side, is one person, so Tim provides the capital, I manage it.
Right.
And that is why we call it partnership in profit. So if there happens to be profit, that's when I will share in it.
Right.
But if it is loss, you will take the loss because the entire business is owned by you, not by me. I share the profit. My partnership with you is in profit, not in the ownership of the business. Okay, I'm your manager, business manager.
Yeah.
So that is what is mudarba. And that is what we use on the other side of the equation for Islamic banks. You know, the entire deposit book, the saving accounts and the which we have in Islamic banks, they are created based on mudarba in this country too, and a lot of other countries as well.
Okay.
So what happens is, you and I put money with Islamic banks as the capital providers. Bank doesn't put their own money, they manage it for us. And they have a right to share in the profit if there happens to be a profit. If there's no profit, then the loss is mine, in theory. That's what it is, okay? Now, that is what banks, Islamic banks use as a basis to offer profits to us. Otherwise, in saving accounts with other conventional banks, they offer interest on it.
Yeah.
So in order for Islamic banks to be able to offer some reward on saving account, they use this as a mechanism. So on the asset side, they build the asset book liability side, they build the liability by getting this money from you and I, and they become the managers of it. On the asset side, so they create a pool of this money. So they use this pool to invest on the other side, car finance, home finance, wherever. So this is where they make the profit from. That profit, in theory, should belong to me, but I have agreed that we will share the profit with you for your management, okay?
Yeah.
So I own those assets, but I have an undivided share of the profit with you in that pool of the assets of the bank, and that is the basis of the profit which I can have a claim on. Now, but we share that profit on agreed ratios, whatever is the agreed ratio, which varies from country to country, and usually the central banks give that permission, what is the ratio you can share. That is the basis of the sharing of the profit. The problem here is, if you see an Islamic bank would also say, this is a typical problem. And the market perception, they say, okay, if I put my money into a conventional bank in a saving account, I will get this much of an interest, which is fixed. So are you telling me that I'm exposed to a risk here? And we as consumers, typical usual small depositors, are very wary of that risk. Now, unless we were driven by faith here, which is a minority, who are willing to take all the risk, whatever it is, just because it is Islamic. For vast majority, it has to be a business case. So what we do as Islamic banks, we create a mechanism to ensure that we create an effect of a fixed return offering without it being committed to be fixed. What it means, in the periods, so by the way, when it comes to profit in a mudarba arrangement, I cannot, or in a musharaka, any partnership, we can't refer to that we will share the profit with reference to the capital, percentage of that. No, because it has to be, we don't know what would be the actual profit. Okay. So we agree on sharing of the profit ratio. Whatever is the profit, by this ratio, we will share it. So in this case as well, Islamic banks say that whatever be the profit, we will share it by this ratio. Now, they also say that we expect, and our target would be that your share, absolute share in the profit, will be expected to be equal to this % of your capital you put in, amount of money. And that's sometimes people get confused. So we are fixing the return, and we are making a reference to the capital, which is only as a target number that we want to try and achieve, because we want to remain comparable to the market, so you can compare it with the market.
Okay.
As a shop. Now, in periods when your share in profit is higher than that target number, what is the market, that additional pool, as part of the agreement, is put into a kind of a reserve for the periods when the profit is actually less than the target. So we dip into that, take something out of it, and in all cases, we Islamic banks end up giving as if they're giving a fixed return.
Okay.
But they use a mechanism to ensure they achieve it, because they need to remain comparable and competitive in the market. So that is what we use as a mudarba as a basis. It's a very commonly structured product from the liability side of the banks.
Okay, so we've got to the heart of a number of things today. Unfortunately, we're running out of time again. So do you know what we're going to have to do? We're going to have to invite you back, because I haven't got through anything like the questions I was hoping we'd get through today, but they could be saved for another time.
Of course, I'm more than happy to come back.
So I think there's going to be a part 3 Islamic Finance 101 here at Mirror Business FM. Look, for now, I really appreciate your time. And I appreciate you coming in and being patient with me. And I appreciate your honesty as well, Dr. Adnan. That's a nice thing to see. Dr. Adnan Aziz is a Sharia advisor, auditor, professor, program officer of the Global Islamic Finance for Climate, Nature and Development. And he's often a speaker as well. A man of many talents, but thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting.
Appreciate you coming in. This is Mirror Business FM. Don't forget, leave us a like, hit subscribe. Wherever you see or listen to us, wherever you're coming from, get in touch. Let us know what you think. We appreciate it. A thumbs up or even an emoji will do as well. Remember, everything we do is available to listen and or watch again. Just search wherever you get your podcasts from and look up Mirror Business FM.
Mira Business FM. The sound of success.